Hello. So we're live, and obviously, if this is your first time here and you like it, feel free to subscribe. And obviously, if you find this interesting, I don't know what we'll talk about yet, but if you find it interesting, feel free to give a thumbs up. So, what we're not doing today is having me read my therapy book because I finished reading that, so I don't need to read any more of it. So, I don't have a plan, I just am here. And we'll see if there's anything anyone says. Oh, my chair is squeaking again. So hello, those of you who are turning up here. So, as I was just saying, I've not got a specific plan. Yeah, it's probably my joints squeaking. Although it's stopped now. It does that, it suddenly stops. Starts and stops when it chooses. I read that as getting your baklava. I thought you were going to get some food. But I am old. Screens where? Eating pickles. You can ask questions, whatever they happen to be. If no one asks, then I stare at the screen and then think, okay, then let's wrap up now then. Someone eating a cat? Oh, Pickles the cat. I was going to say, I don't recall any conversation about screens. Oh, so you're eating kittens. Oh, okay, that's been said. I'm normal. You can seek help to stop smoking. I also have a couple of quit smoking tracks on my channel that if someone is ready to stop smoking, they can use. Hello to those of you joining. The mirror induction should be fairly easy to do because you're literally just doing normal hypnosis on the person in the mirror. Note this shirt doesn't say anything. It's just black and white. Potentially, you could use the same kind of process if you can interpret it as the sensations and then sensory kind of experience. I spoke about that the other day when I was talking about what hypnosis is. Um, when I read literally the whole of my Hypnotherapy Revealed book. So you'll get a lot more information, obviously, about that in the Hypnotherapy Revealed book, where there was many hours of talking about what hypnosis was or is, and about focusing. And the idea is that it's about the non-conscious focusing. Someone could be consciously aware of that focus, but you're not trying to get them to consciously focus. You're trying to get them focusing as a being, and if they happen to be consciously aware of it, so if you say look at that spot over there, they're going to consciously be aware that they're looking at a spot, but that's just incidental. You're not trying to focus their conscious attention as such. That just happens to be incidental in the fact you are focusing their attention. If you perhaps touch them on the shoulder, they might not consciously notice you've just touched them on the shoulder, but you're focusing their attention. Well, I'm a very simple person, so my assumption is always that if something's easy for me, it must be easy for everyone else because I do a pretty bad job of most things. So if I can manage to do something, my assumption is anyone literally can do it. Yes, my shirt is normal today. What was the good question? I don't remember seeing a good question, or a question in general, that is. Oh, yeah, I did answer that. When I'm reading the questions, I normally pay no attention to the name attached to the question because that's extra, like reading. Through most of the beginning, I talk about it through talking about the trance nature of reality, the pattern matching brain, and what is hypnosis. So through all of that, that's all about that whole kind of area, setting up, explaining everything beforehand so that you've got a basis for how to understand it when I get to the talking about the what is hypnosis. Yeah, the thing I'm not a fan of these with is having sleeves, um, because it means that if I get a bit chilly and I want to put something on over the top of it, then I've got sleeves over the top of sleeves, like a jumper or something, as opposed to a coat. Then I've got sleeves over the top of sleeves, and they'll get ruffled up and stick together and twist around my arms and strangle my arms, and it's horrible. But ones with short sleeves aren't too bad, and ones with long sleeves is fine if um, it's say a bit warmer weather, so that I'm just wearing um, whatever it is. Why would no one cry in baseball? Yeah, generally coats have loose sleeves, so wearing something sleeved under a coat normally isn't a problem. But when you put a jumper or something on, it just all kind of bunches up. Straight jackets I do like; they're comfortable. Um, I've never heard of it as a saying. Oh no, that would annoy me. And they'd have to make the sleeves exactly the right length for my arms. Oh, you find straight jackets comfortable as well? Well, everyone has tried on straight jackets. It's like a hug, but without the actual contact from another human being. It's like a weighted blanket. You get the kind of feeling, or having sheets that are tucked in tightly that you have to kind of squeeze your way in and wriggle your way into. It gives you that kind of feeling, hugged feeling, without all the touching and without all the soft bits that go with the sort of feeling. It's the tightness, it's the pressure. It's like being underwater. The thing I like about diving down deep and lying on the bottom of a swimming pool or something is the pressure on you feels nice and relaxing. It depends what you mean by listening to it without consciously listening to it. You've got to be paying attention to something. Obviously, in mindfulness meditation, the idea is to um, make it so that you're not paying attention to anything. So, with mindfulness meditation, frequently they'll start out holding your attention on one thing, and then you'll do that long enough so that you have no wavering attention. Your attention initially, say you're told to listen, to focus your attention on just your breathing or something. Initially, from time to time, normally a lot to start with if you're new to it, you get lots of thoughts and what have you. But then as time goes on, you keep bringing your attention back to your breathing. As time goes on, you end up only paying attention to your breathing. Um, and then as time continues on even longer than that, that becomes automatic. So you don't even pay attention to the breathing. So you're just aware generally. You're not kind of you're consciously aware that you're aware, but you're not consciously attending to anything. So you're aware that you're just being. You're not talking to yourself in your head. You're not attaching awareness to anything around you. You're not like attaching awareness to, oh, there's light shining in my window, or you're not talking to yourself in your head. You're just aware that you're in that moment. Like when perhaps you're playing a sport or something and you get in the zone, you're just aware of being in the moment. You're not attaching or attending to anything specifically. So it's kind of the wrong way to think about it. Your conscious awareness is what you are consciously aware of. So it's not about the conscious part catching up or anything. It's what are you consciously paying attention to? What are you giving yourself? What are you focusing on? So you can be doing one thing while a pattern is playing out elsewhere. Um, but then a part of you is kind of doing that as well. So, for example, you could be um, reading a book while in the background. Uh, so I think one example I've given before is the child who was playing on their Nintendo DS, and while they're playing on their Nintendo DS, um, the TV had something play a TV program on over here in the UK called what was it? Horrible program. Jeremy Kyle, that's the one. Had the Jeremy Kyle show. It's a bit like Jerry Springer. Had the Jeremy Kyle show on TV about absent fathers, and so the child wasn't consciously attending to the TV; they were consciously attending to their Nintendo DS. But as a being, sort of non-consciously, their awareness was paying attention to the TV. And once that TV got onto specific issues relating to their life, obviously that drew more attention. Like if you say someone's name, you can be at a party having a chat with someone, and someone can say Dan across the room, and you suddenly, despite all the voices and everything, you suddenly hear that word, and you don't necessarily consciously register straight away, but it will get your attention. But you're not likely to, yeah, you've got to kind of be aware of. It's easier, obviously, to go through the whole lot. I'm trying not to end up having to say everything all over again. But if you're not engaging with something, you're not going to get the results. So if you're hoping that somehow mindfulness will work somehow in the background, then that's unlikely to happen if consciously you're trying to attend to other things as well. So you have to kind of engage. The whole point is, what is your focus of attention? I'm just seeing what else has been coming up. So generally, a bit like with my sleep stuff, if you don't attend to it, if you don't engage with the sleep meditations, you're not likely to get much of the benefit from it. You're not likely to get benefit from the therapeutic stuff that I do, and you're also less likely to fall asleep to it. If you're busy chatting to yourself in your head while listening to the sleep meditations and not consciously attending or not directing your attention as a person to the process that's going on, it's less likely to have an impact on you because you're kind of undoing everything. So you might be, say, you're having anxiety thoughts, and I'm talking in a relaxed way. You've got headphones on or something, and I'm talking in this relaxed way into your ears. You're kind of undoing the fact that even though you can hear the relaxed voice talking in your ears, you're kind of undoing all that by deciding to be focusing on the anxiety. So what you want is to be, as a whole being, focusing your attention on where it needs to be. It doesn't mean you have to be consciously. It's at that stage you are consciously aware, but the whole point is you don't have a conscious mind and an unconscious mind. You just have one brain, and technically, and you just have one kind of mind, perhaps, as a better word. Um, and there are just some things that you are consciously aware of at sometimes, and some things, a lot of things, you're not consciously aware of. I don't own a straitjacket, unfortunately. I'm sure that running down the street naked, yelling gibberish, will also lead to a number of videos on Twitter and YouTube and all across social media. Oh God, wouldn't want to be wrapped up in toilet paper. That's just tickly and horrible. And it involves people getting near you, and nobody likes people anywhere near them if they can help it, I'm sure. No idea Well, my assumption is that we'll still be locked down May 4th, in which case I will still be here. That's my best friend's birthday. And I doubt that we're doing anything. It's always good to have your therapist still there when you close your eyes. Yeah, he's, I think, more of a Star Trek fan, but he does like Star Wars as well. And I think he likes his birthday being on May 4th. Yep, very frequently used analog marking. I've often talked about, well, I talked about it obviously while reading the book where I talk about it, about just sort of marking out ideas and different ways that you can do that. And I've talked in the past, obviously, about different ways I do it as well, and things like, for example, how I always talk to people looking in one eye if they're somebody who I'm likely to be um, interacting with on a regular basis. Talk to them always looking in one eye so that you can look in the other eye whenever you want to say anything that you want to mark out from the communication in some way, so that they just get used to the fact that this is just the way I always talk to people. So I'll always talk looking in someone's left eye, well, no, to my left, so their right eye. Yeah. So I'm looking to the left, and then look to the right whenever I want to mark anything out. So that way, in literally everyday situations, whoever it's with, anyone who interacts with me for any length of time will automatically just know that's a pattern of communication I use. That I look in the left eye for look left, so in their right eye, for talking normally, and then anytime I mark something out, glance to the other eye to mark it out. And then if they end up closing their eyes, so once it gets to if it gets to a context where they close their eyes, then I carry on the same, but now I tilt my head just very slightly one way or the other so that my voice location comes from a different point. So they then pick up on that and recognize it's the same pattern, it's just now auditorily. Putting on sunglasses doesn't change anything. I'm still going to look at one eye. It's just you now have some glass in front of it. Doesn't make any difference. It works perfectly fine. People pick up on the pattern and then respond to it. And obviously, like anything like that, it's not like literally the first time you sort of give one suggestion or idea, looking, marking it out, that instantly makes someone like respond that second. Obviously, the whole point is that they have to pick up on the pattern. So there isn't a pattern from doing it once. There's obviously a pattern from it being the way you're communicating consistently. Although it doesn't often take that long for people to start assuming they're reasonably intelligent people, etc. It doesn't take people long to suddenly grasp the pattern and respond to it. The same when you're, presenting to groups or whatever, and you just kind of move your head slightly one way or the other while you're presenting, so that you can start marking things out. um, to kind of start hypnotizing the whole group or whatever else you're doing with them. Yeah, remove your eyes or regularly swap your eyes around so that you break the pattern by mixing and matching your eyes. And I think it was Stephen Brooks who I first heard talk about using just looking in one eye or the other, um, as a way of essentially doing the same as you do when you move your head very slightly one way or the other, which obviously Erickson was very famous for doing. That he would sit there and do things like the My Friend John technique, where he would have his head like looking down at the floor when he was doing one thing and looking up at the client when he was doing another, or he would move his head side to side for other things. But it's all just obviously um, ways of communicating. Just seeing if there's any other questions that come up. So far, we're just talking about violence, apparently. I would say anyone doing any therapy is doing hypnosis. Um, there are some aspects of it, of uh, Joe Griffin and Ivan Tyrrell's views on autism, that are interesting. So the theories around context blindness and them calling it katextia is kind of interesting, because I would agree that a large part of my problems are that I don't really recognize the contexts of things. When I'm in a situation, I don't really notice. So I can teach about how people are different when they're with their grandparents, to when they're with their friends, to when they're with their partner, to when they're with their work colleagues, to when they're with their managers, etc. But the reality is, I'm Dan, and I'm Dan whoever I'm with. I couldn't care less who you are. I don't get that kind of context thing of, oh, you don't do that in this context, you don't do that in that context. You just are that person. So I can understand the kind of context blindness thing of um, kind of not being able to grasp contexts, and that is a big issue. But I think that there's more to it than that. So I'm not such a fan of other aspects of their theories of autism. Um, at least with me, it doesn't feel like it resonates so much. It doesn't feel like it matches my lived reality. Um, I would say that I probably almost never rewatch Star Wars. When it used to be on TV every year, obviously you would watch it every year when it was on, when you're a kid. Um, but since being an adult, obviously 6 more films have come out since then. Since being an adult, I would say that unless it happens to be on when I'm searching through things, um, I don't really watch them, because they're long. They're long films generally, and I'm just going to be sat on my own watching them, and there's always something else I need to be doing. So I'm more likely nowadays to watch something new if there's something I haven't watched. And there's going to be so much that I haven't watched that's new that I almost never nowadays, apart from say The Simpsons, go back and watch, rewatch anything, because I just don't have the time to do it. Obviously, it'd be good if I did. It'd be nice to have the time to go and watch things. Let's have a look. Improving hypnotic language, do hypnosis. So the way I teach is language last, not language first. Because I think, so the students that I've met who've learned hypnotic language first end up struggling with doing hypnosis. They end up tripping over language all the time. Hypnotists who learn to do hypnosis first do all the hypnotic language instinctively, because that's what happens. If you're doing good hypnosis, you do all the, or good therapy, you do all of the language naturally. So doing it that way round obviously is a much better way. So I worked with a hypnotherapist who had done tons of decades of hypnotherapy training, but kept on saying, I'm a rubbish hypnotist, I'm a rubbish hypnotist, I can't do it, I can't do it. I never know, am I supposed to use an embedded command here? Am I supposed to use a contingent suggestion? When am I supposed to use a compound suggestion? When should I be doing tag questions? When should I be doing double binds, double dissociation, double binds? When should I be doing the yes set, the reverse yes set? And they were so busy attempting to figure out when you should do different things that they never ended up, they would kind of do perfectly good hypnosis, but end up messing everything up for themselves, like in their own way, their own opinion of it all. So I said, hypnotize me, we'll video it, and we'll watch it back, and I'll tell you what you did. And so they hypnotized me, and we put it back on my TV, watched it back. I kept starting and stopping it, pausing it every time they did something. So they would say things like, just take a moment to begin to relax. And as you begin to relax, you can perhaps notice your shoulders beginning to slump. So I'd then pause it. So you've used words like as. So you've now started using contingent suggestions, and you're doing these embedded commands, and you're doing this and you're doing that. And they were saying, wow, I didn't even know I was doing any of this. And so that's how I teach it. I teach it where you do the hypnosis, and then you start learning the explanation for what you've been doing afterwards, in the same way that you learn your native language, and then you reach an age where you have lessons that teach you about grammar and about punctuation and all the rest of it. All of that gets taught when you already know how to do what you're doing. You're now just learning the labels to go with what you're doing. So my view is, if someone wants to improve on hypnotic language, the real thing is that you probably do all the hypnotic language perfectly fine. If you can do hypnosis perfectly fine, what you need to do is make sure you can do hypnosis perfectly fine, and then just start learning the language for what you did. So break it down and say, so I did that then, and I did this then. So yeah, you always want your voice to go with people, and you want to sort of have them carry you in their minds almost. I would say as a child, with James Bond, Jaws, Star Wars, Back to the Future, The Goonies, I don't know, a lot of the other 80s fun things, Terminator, all those sort of 70s and 80s, Superman, all those 70s and 80s things that were on TV literally every single Christmas and summer. I would say that I watched them every single Christmas and summer, because they're always on, and you like it, so why would you not watch it? Well, the difficulty is I have to work as hard as I do to make sure I make a living. I am working a bit harder technically currently, doing live streams every single day, that adds approximately about 20 hours extra work a week to my work. This is a time when right now, 5 minutes ago, I would have been stood at the window with Abby clapping for the NHS, but obviously I'm here live streaming instead. And just because of what day it is, I would also currently probably be watching YouTube videos, or even perhaps if I had this kind of time every night, sometimes I would get into a game and play a computer game every night. The same one, but I'd play like a game all the way through. So I'd play it for many hours every day, or nearly every day, until I complete it. And then I'm not one of those people who's obsessive about completing like every single bit of the game, in terms of like completing you've got to get all the flags, or you've got to get all of the special items, or I couldn't care less about any of that. All I want is, what is the story to this, and I'll work my way through the story, and then once it's done, it's like, right, I've done that, now I'll move on. So that's the bit I complete. So it's, in modern games, it's rarely everything else. When you started doing hypnosis, who in your family or life was the most supportive, and who gave you the most grief over it? No one cared either way, particularly when I started. I wrote a letter. I've got the letter here now because Dad kept it. But I wrote a letter to my dad when I was like 15 or whatever, saying I can now do hypnosis very well. I didn't see my dad between the ages of about 5, when he was kicked out, through to when I was 15. And on the day that I was due to see him, I blew him off for taking or going with a girlfriend that I was going out with at the time to hospital to see her dad, who was in hospital ill. Because I thought, well, I've not seen my dad for 10 years. Not seeing him for 10 years and an extra day is literally not going to make any difference to anyone in the world. I had no kind of care whether I saw, like most people in my life, I had no real care whether I saw him or not. It was just a polite, he's your dad, so obviously you're supposed to kind of at least see them once or twice, just to say hello, or whatever it is you do with parents. So I thought, this girl who needs support at this moment in time needs the support at this moment in time. That's far more important than me seeing my dad. So I went to hospital with her. Wasn't a long-term relationship, particularly. None of my relationships then were. But once Dad was back in my life, I obviously would write to him from time to time, because I was told that's what you're supposed to do, communicate with this person. So I wrote him a letter kind of saying, yeah, I can hypnotize people now. And that was it. And he's a Jehovah's Witness. So it's very odd that, this Jehovah's Witness was more than comfortable with me doing this. He had, I don't know if it's beside me here. I'm just checking. I've got some actual cassette tapes next to me, obviously, because I'm old. And obviously a tape player. Nope, it's not beside me. I've got a cassette tape from Dad's, which was a self-hypnosis tape that someone had made for him, not me. So as a Jehovah's Witness, he was very open-minded. He also smoked, drank, slept around, gambled. So, fit the description for a Jehovah's Witness. So he was happy with what I did. And as I've mentioned before, when he was dying, he said the one thing he's very proud of me for is my kind of ability to help heal others. And the thing he was most proud of in my writing was actually my hypnotherapy book, my original big hypnotherapy, like 650-page hypnotherapy book. He said that when he read that, he couldn't understand for the life of him how I could not be a devout Jehovah's Witness. He said everything in it pointed to him believing that I was definitely, deeply, religious and spiritual, etc., etc., etc. And he really wanted me to be, but wouldn't push me into it. He just made it clear that he really wanted me to be. So he was very supportive. My mum saw it as when I started saying to her, I want to do hypnosis, I maybe want to learn it enough, like as qualified as I can be. She suddenly saw it as, oh, people make a lot of money out of this, because all the marketing is, make yourself this many thousands of pounds a year as a hypnotherapist. So she suddenly was very keen on supporting me because she saw it as a possible income opportunity, but then looked at the prices of the courses. And yes, it says you can make thousands, but you have to spend thousands to take the courses. So that fizzled out. But we did end up getting all of the free cassette tapes. So we did approach all the different training schools that said, we'll send you this this free sample of how we do hypnosis, like a self-hypnosis tape or whatever, and to sort of let you know what our school offers. So we got all of the free self-hypnosis tapes, and I bought a few self-hypnosis books and things. So for her, not for me. She was looking at it for herself, for how she could make extra money. So yeah, so that so mum was supportive. All my brothers are younger than me. The next one down couldn't really care less. He wasn't supportive or against it. He never engaged with me about it in any way, and I never engaged with him about it. The one down from that, I just said to him, can I hypnotize you? Is there anything you'd like help with? He said, I'd like to play pool better. So I said, okay, then. He laid on mum's bed. I hypnotized him. I said, I sort of got a snooker script from, I can't remember which one, but one of these two books. I got a snooker script out of one of those. Every time I came to the word snooker, I said pool instead. And so I just kind of changed the word snooker for pool, and he played pool better afterwards. And then my brother beneath that, I sort of said, would do the same with him. Is there anything you want help with? Well, I don't want to wet the bed anymore. Okay, then lie down on mum's bed and I'll hypnotize you and tell you not to wet the bed anymore. So I got the stop wetting the bed script, read that to him, and he stopped wetting the bed. So they were ambivalent to it. They couldn't care less. They were children, so they hadn't had their minds messed with to give hypnosis a bad name. They'd seen the same kind of Paul McKenna doing hypnosis on TV type stuff as I had seen. They hadn't got any kind of thoughts about it in like negative connotations or anything. And then when I got in my first serious relationship as an adult, the person I was with was terrified of hypnosis, terrified that maybe it's controlling and maybe I'll end up trying to make her do things I want her to do that she doesn't want to do and all that sort of stuff. So out of respect, I would read about hypnosis and stuff, but I just didn't go there. Since we split up, there have been times where she's asked me for help to help her friends and things. She sort of said, oh, so-and-so is having problems. Would you be able to do therapy with them? And she knows that I do hypnotherapy. And so she would just ask. So she was fine with it once I was trained and not with her. But she'd had lots of bullying experiences and things growing up, and she worried that it could be me then bullying her, but kind of covertly, almost like I am controlling her through hypnosis. And so she just didn't want that. And she was 17 at the time. I was 19. And so I just said, fair enough, I just won't do it. And I didn't even try and explain to her about hypnosis or anything. I just left it as, I respect you, so this is the fair thing to do. And then with Abby's always been very, very supportive. And again, I almost never do hypnosis with Abby specifically because of the fact that I don't want that kind of sense of me having any power over her or anything. And I pretty much don't sort of use hypnosis with Abby in that sense. Doesn't mean I don't use hypnotic techniques like if she's in pain or something, it doesn't mean that I don't talk about things in a way that's going to reduce the pain, but I don't do the whole uh, right, you've got anxiety or whatever. Let's sit you down. Let's start exploring this. Let's start having me take on the role of therapist. I don't want to take on the role of therapist with my wife. I want to take on the role of husband with my wife, not a kind of a one up or a different role to the one that we kind of should have. But she's supportive. So I've never had anyone specifically in my life who's not supportive, but then I've also not had anyone who's specifically like, oh yes, we will help you to achieve this, other than Abby. I've never had anyone else in my life who said, yeah, I'll help you to achieve this. um yeah, my brother is Jehovah's Witness, one of them is, and he doesn't, I don't know what his views are currently because we don't really talk about it. But he seems far more comfortable with what I do than he was um, earlier on. So through my kind of 20s, he would be very much, oh, hypnosis is really sort of evil and it's letting the devil into you and all this sort of stuff. He'd have all those views. And I'd be, with him, I'd be kind of saying, that's all complete rubbish. That might be what you get taught, but you're being taught that from a place of ignorance by people who don't know what they're talking about, rather than from someone who does know what they're talking about. And so I have told him about hypnosis, hoping that he would then just make up his own mind. Because obviously I've had the conversations with him about, so what is it about hypnosis that makes it bad? So not about the hypnosis itself, but what is it that it's because hypnosis allows this that makes it bad? And obviously his thing was, it's because hypnosis makes it so that the devil can get in and control you and all that stuff. And so to me, it was a case of, well, if that's your fear, that it's something that lets the devil in and lets the devil control you, then if you end up understanding it, then maybe you'll make a different decision about it, even if you don't publicly like talk about it with other Jehovah's Witnesses or anything. Maybe then you'll understand that actually that's not what I do at all, and that's not what hypnosis is. Um, so I don't know how he's changed his opinion because we don't really talk about it, but I know that he doesn't kind of say anything negative towards me about what I do or anything, and hasn't done for kind of nearly 2 decades now. So um, no, the brother who I used to do magic tricks with is the one who had no interest at all in doing hypnosis. Yep, that's always a good idea. Do suggestions under the guise of dictation. I remember on a training course, somebody had a uh, bad back, and they were complaining about this bad back throughout the whole beginning of the training course about how it was hurting more and more and more. And we were sat on normal, like hard training course type chairs, normal officey chairs, the sort of plastic, rock solid things. And they were complaining more and more about these their bad back. And so obviously in the lunch break, as I stood up, I walked behind her, tapped her on the shoulder to get her attention, or put my hand on her shoulder to get her attention. And as I did, she looked up, and I can't remember the exact thing I said, but I said something like, "It's perfectly fine to feel comfortable by the end of lunch, or discover that it happens sooner. It's entirely up to you." And then she looked confused, and I just carried on walking. And then obviously after lunch, she no longer had a bad back, and then at the end of the day said, "Did you do something to me when you spoke to me just before lunch?" And obviously I said, "Well, we are on a hypnosis training course, just demonstrating hypnosis." and we just sort of left it at that. But I've never ever had a relationship with neighbours. I don't know what it'd be like to even know your neighbours, let alone have a relationship with them. Once I was teaching hypnotherapy here in my flat. I've talked about that before, how I used to run my hypnotherapy trainings from my flat with small groups that cost a bit more, but it allows me to have fewer people on the group on the course, and allows those people to get significantly more attention from me. So you'd have like 4 or 5 or 6 people present, and that's it. And it also lets them then look at my books and what have you if they want. Um, but it always means that people in the block of flats where I live, um, end up knowing that I do hypnosis. And so I have done things like I went next door to the neighbours that used to live next door. They'd asked me, the husband asked me if I could help him with pain, and the wife wanted help with sleep, that she got almost no sleep any night. And so obviously I worked with the husband first, dealt with his pain. So like 8 p.m. or something, went in, worked with the husband for like 2 hours, helping him with his pain. And then he went to another room, and the wife came in, and I then worked with her for 2 hours. And then I left and said to the husband, she's fast asleep in there. Um, you might want to kind of leave her. And obviously, she then slept the night perfectly fine, having gone to sleep at like 11:30 or whatever. And slept all the way through the night until like 8 a.m. or something, and slept perfectly fine after that. So I've had, obviously, neighbors end up asking, can I do some therapy with them? Um, yeah, I wouldn't know any of my neighbors by name or anything. So definitely not closely. Even when I lived, even as a child, when I lived literally in a location where there was probably about 80 people who lived in the entire village. Um, I didn't know the names of anyone around us. Um, Never wanted to, never had any reason to. A bit like now, obviously, never want to know the names of anyone around, or have no reason to. It just sounds like it would encourage them to start talking to you, which obviously the last thing you want is having people acknowledging each other. Have I ever refused to teach anyone hypnosis because I'm uncomfortable with them or their motives? Um, Online, I've been approached by people where I've just said, no, I'm not going to teach you. And normally it's because the way they talk about it is very much in terms of, I want to know how to get my own way at this. I want to know how to control people like that. I want to be able to pull any girl, or, all that kind of language. And I just think, you're not wanting to learn as a therapist. So why would I teach you? You're not wanting to learn even for personal development or anything. I'm not going to just teach you to go out there. For a start, it would unlikely work how they want it to work, or how they believe it will work, which means I'm wasting my time, because I'll be teaching them a skill that they want to use in a negative way, that won't work even if they try to use it in that negative way. All it will do is um, have them kind of, I don't know, make a fool of themselves. But it's wasted my time teaching them something they're going to use that's pointless. So yeah, there have been people I've not taught. It's never happened in my real life. There's been, I've had challenges, in pubs and things. You'll always get people that hear that you do hypnosis, and they'll say, "No, I bet you couldn't hypnotize me," and they start getting really rowdy and in your face about it, and I just say, "You're right, I can't," and then just leave it at that. I've got nothing to prove, so I just tell them I can't. You're correct, and there's not a lot more they can do then. Yeah, I've got someone who I taught, a guy called Jason Tollan, a very good hypnotherapist. Um, he lives in Denver, I think. He came over here and did one of my diploma courses in my flat. Whereas part of the course, you'd get put up in a hotel in Bognor Regis, which is down on the seafront, and then each day you get ferried over to my flat, do the session, and then go back to the hotel in the evening. Yeah, I know plenty of courses that teach things in relation to picking up women. Some of it works, some of it works if it's done sensibly, but the reality is the people who learn it generally don't do it sensibly. They do it and sound sleazy and terrible and manipulative. I've obviously got The Game. So it's a book that I found very interesting reading, which is all about pickup artists. Obviously, Louis Theroux also did an episode on it as well. He did a thing on pickup artists and people using hypnosis to get people. No, the person who wants me to do the sleep meditations in Colorado is Jamie Coombs, who runs Natural Balance Foods, which is a company that makes the Naked Whole Food bars and the Trek bars and things like that. He owns a big chunk of land, including a bit of a mountain somewhere out in Colorado. Someone who's got depression, I would say that a mix of, well, using cognitive behavioral therapy mixed with something like hypnosis and things like mindfulness generally works very well. But you've got to find a good practitioner. So if a practitioner is kind of trying to rush you through something, or I don't know, trying to get you engaged in bits that don't match where you're at, that probably doesn't make sense. But trying to get you to go too fast or whatever, that's to focus on the bits that you're not ready yet to focus on, that can be a problem. But the research is that generally cognitive behavioral approaches are the ones that work best for treating depression. The ones that to avoid, the ones that end up working least, are things where you end up ruminating on the problem. So things that get you focusing more, things that replicate the process that depressed people do of worrying about their problems, they generally deepen depression and make you have to stay in therapy for a vastly longer period of time, and often lead to you feeling worse after every session. So psychodynamic approaches generally will have you trying to focus on negative stuff from your past and negative stuff that comes up, and all of that ends up leading you to, that's what you do when you worry naturally. So that ends up leading you to deepen the depression, which you don't want. So what you want is something that's focused on the present and the future, and focused on changing patterns of behavior. And generally, that's stuff that comes out of cognitive behavioral therapy. But different practitioners have different levels of ability at applying stuff, and more flexibility. So some are very inflexible and kind of expect you to just do something because it's what they've told you, like use a specific thought form or something, a thought record. But then you go to use that thought record, but it doesn't match what you're doing or how you think about things, or you find it really difficult because maybe you're uncomfortable with forms or whatever it happens to be. An inflexible therapist would kind of keep trying to force you to do that, and saying, but this is what's going to make you better, which may well be true. If you could do it, it may make you better. But if it's not the right approach for you, then they need to adapt to make sure that they're applying the same knowledge, the same thing that will make you better, but in a way that suits you. So that's kind of, it's more about making sure the therapist is doing it tailored to you, not trying to fit you to the therapy. I've no idea if autism makes me naturally more ethical, because I've got nothing to compare it to know if I would be different if not. I generally struggle with things like deception and multi-level communication. Is probably a better way of looking at it. I struggle with the idea of you say one thing but mean something else, and the idea of, like, I like black and white things. So it's very much a case of, for me, if this is the thing that we should be doing, why are we not doing it? So when I made my incredibly unpopular video, which I still can't grasp really why it's unpopular, because it's nothing to do with climate change. It was to do with autism. My video about Greta Thunberg, where I was getting annoyed with, obviously I spend a lot of time on social media responding to people's comments and things on Facebook, on Twitter. I get emails and what have you. So, but by being on Twitter and Facebook a lot, mainly Twitter, I'd get lots of the comments about, or I'd see lots of the comments attacking Greta Thunberg about how she presents. So not about her views, but literally about how she presents. And so I obviously made a video about that. And part of it was pointing out that people were saying, oh, she's so deeply distressed by all this. This is exploitation, etc., etc., etc. And I was trying to sort of point out, no, her reaction is perfectly normal for someone who's autistic. It's very much, so you're telling me that there's this thing that's so dire that literally in a bunch of years, not that many, we've reached a point where there's no turning back. So why are we not doing something about it? It's a very black and white thing. Either it's a problem and you deal with it, or it's not a problem, in which case, why are we saying it's a problem? And so I could totally get her black and white view. And so from that perspective, obviously it can make people more ethical. But then there's the other perspective that somebody could have black and white thinking, but their focus is on something different. So it could be like, so you're telling me that if I do this, it makes me lots of money. And then someone might say, yeah, but it does hurt lots of other people. It does ruin families, etc., etc., etc. Yeah, but you're telling me that if I do this, I can make lots of money. Yes, that's true. Well, then I'm going to do this because it can make me lots of money. I don't care about all these families and stuff. I'm going to make this money. So it could work the other way, that you end up diving straight in to something like, say, I don't know, drug dealing. Someone could dive into being a drug dealer because they see it as, you're telling me I can make so much money out of doing this. And that becomes their focus. So it doesn't necessarily instantly, being autistic, make you ethical in that sense, or make you suddenly make good decisions. But it normally does make you make very black and white decisions and stick very rigidly to your decision. And in my case, it makes me very, very honest and open. If I'm asked questions, I generally just answer them. if it's relating to someone else, where it might impact on someone else, then I'll sort of say I don't want to answer it. But yeah, but it's a difficult one to answer because obviously I only have my lived experience to try and work it out on. I don't have an alternate kind of version of Dan who's lived alongside me, who I can say, "How did you turn out? What's different between us?" Yeah, I'm very unlikely to ever come over to Colorado. As I've mentioned, um, it's uh, Jamie Coombs would love me to come over and run things over there, like doing a retreat where you sit around a campfire telling healing stories. This is the kind of image he's got that I would tell. I used to run courses with Jamie Coombs here in the UK, with Jamie Coombs and a guy called Richie Watson. And the three of us used to run well-being events where Richie is a raw food vegan, and so he would talk about nutrition, and he would talk about uh, making or leading a sort of a vegan lifestyle. Jamie is heavily into fitness, and he's also an entrepreneur who's ran a really successful company. And then there's me who deals with the mind. And so between us, we would run these events, and I would do meditations and stuff at the events, and it would be like a whole day or a couple of days or whatever. And so Jamie would like that kind of thing replicated, but where I would be there so that people can go out into the mountains, have a campfire, and I'll tell therapeutic healing stories around a real campfire rather than just metaphorically doing it. Actually, have a real campfire. We're all sitting around the campfire telling these healing stories, helping people to get better over the number of days. He'd already worked out with me how we could do things like having specific routes, therapeutic routes around the land he's got that would be made intentionally as therapeutic walks. For example, like walking up hills and up into the mountains is a good way of helping someone to get used to that kind of struggling and pushing forward. Having the view at the top looking back gives you that perspective of looking back where you came from and feeling that sense of achievement, etc. So we'd worked out how therapeutically we could turn his land essentially into a living metaphor. So a bit like I would do within my stories, but his land is the whole thing. And then I would do my meditations and what have you as part of it as well, and teaching various skills as part of it. My big issue is that I don't like uncertainty. I don't like kind of doing things that I'm uncomfortable with, particularly. I have to because I have to make a living. But if I don't need the money, then I don't necessarily do things that make me uncomfortable. And so the thought of flying to America, like when I worked on the TV program in Dubai, apart from the fact I'd lost my job, which is why I needed to earn the money, which is why I accepted doing the TV job, I did it or went through with it because I had to do nothing. I literally was told, get to this train station and a car will pick you up from the train station. That car will drive all of us, so myself, Dr. David Lewis, and another guy called Darren Bridger, will drive all of us to the airport. I've handed my passport over already, so I don't have to deal with anything. The production crew, whoever's responsible, I don't have to know, but somehow magic happens. All I have to do is follow along to the crowd, and that is it. So I follow along the crowd, follow along the people in front of me as we walk through the airport, follow along the people in front of me onto the plane, follow along the people in front of me off the plane, follow along the people in front of me through the airport, follow along to the hotel, and we're all next door to each other in the hotel. So I just get to my room, don't have to check in, it's not my responsibility to check in. The whole production, all that happens kind of by someone else. So essentially all I had to do was walk, and it was terrifying even doing that. And it was terrifying doing each day of filming, where it was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And I was just told, it's okay. Literally, we just meet in the foyer every morning, all jump in a car, we get taken to a location. You will then just wire people up and what have you. And you don't, you'll get told what to do, and it's all easy enough. And it's all stuff that I kind of had done a bit of before. So, but that was sort of scary enough. But the only way to kind of get me to do anything like that would literally be to have someone who goes in front of me, who just essentially is a bit like a PA type person, but someone who just literally will help me through the whole thing. So most events I go to, I will pay other people, if I want to go to the event, to be at the event with me. So if I want to go to the theatre, I pay somebody to go to the theatre with me to make sure that, so when I went to see Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen in the theatre, I paid the same price as my ticket for someone to go with me, to sit next to me, to make sure that I arrived in the right venue okay, that I managed to get through the venue okay, that I managed to get to my seat okay. When I go to see Darren Brown, I will pay, I don't care if it's a stranger, I will pay for someone to sit next to me and to go with me and to make sure I get to my seat okay, to make sure I get through the process okay. When I go to the cinema, I like to do the same there as well. And it then makes me really angry and anxious when people let me down, and suddenly, like when I went to see Elvis, the '68 comeback special, in the cinema, whatever anniversary one it was, must have been 2018, so 50 years anniversary. When I went to that, I paid for someone to go with me, and on the day they said, "Oh, I can't make it now," and I couldn't find anyone. I literally said, "I don't care who I don't care. I don't have to know the person, just anyone. I just want I've got the ticket. Anyone want to come and see Elvis with me for free?" Because I didn't want to miss it. And I shouted out on Facebook, I shouted out on Twitter. I said, you don't have to know me. All you have to do is just be willing to turn up and sit through Elvis with me. And I couldn't find a single person at all on the day who would turn up with me. So and when I went to see Darren Brown, I've seen him a number of times giving talks and things. I will pay for someone to go with me to make sure that there's someone there with me. And as many of you have probably know about, when I went to see Darren Brown give his talk about photography and how he does his street photography and stuff like that. And I'm a bit too polite, which means that I managed to arrive very early, because I always arrive everywhere incredibly early. So if I have to be somewhere at, say, 10 a.m., that means arrive at 7 a.m. to make sure you've got plenty of time in case there's any delays, and so that you can then find the venue, scout out the venue, make sure you know exactly where the entrance is, how you get in, all those details. And then you sit in front of, you sort of sit and wait until the venue opens or whatever. So I arrived early for the Darren Brown thing, obviously. We went in, someone came with me and supported me to make sure I got across London and got to the event. And they were going to also take me home again afterwards, which is incredibly kind of them. So we went all the way to London, went to the bookshop, we're at the front. That meant I got nearly front row seat. The front 2 rows were booked, were kind of cordoned off for the shop staff and book club card holder member people. So I sort of got as close as I actually could. But that meant that when it got to the book signings, everyone started joining the queue from the back of the room. So me now sat at the front meant I was at the back of the queue. But being autistic, and my friend, the guy who supported me, being a little bit loud and a little bit kind of putting pressure on people, he was at the front sitting near Darren Brown while Darren Brown was doing his book signings, and near the staff who stood down the front as well. And he wasn't in the queue, he was just sat down near the front. and he kept on kind of grabbing the attention of the staff, just saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm here with my, I'm here supporting an autistic guy. He's back in the queue. He's right at the back," and um, he gets very anxious at these sort of events, which is all true. And you can really tell when he's about to kind of have a bit of an outburst and really struggle, because he just starts fidgeting a lot. And he was starting to, he's a hypnotist as well. He's got very good observational skills, and he was noticing my behaviors and started talking about my behaviors. And so the staff felt, oh no, we can't have an autistic person having an outburst in here. I'm going to ask Darren Brown if he's happy to have the autistic guy come to the front now and just get that signing over and done with, so that it doesn't disrupt this whole room, because there's literally hundreds of us in this room, and I was right at the back. And so Darren Brown agreed to see me there and then. And so I was then, the person I was there with, he shouted across the entire bookshop, "Oi, Dan, get yourself over here. Darren said he'll see you next." And obviously then everyone is staring at me while I walk across the entire bookshop from the back of the queue to the front, to a private little section where Darren kind of walked over to me separate from the crowds, and signed my books and had photos taken and what have you. And then we left. But yeah, so frequently I have to have, when I went and took part in Comic-Con, where I was obviously there on the Jedi panel talking about Jedi mind stuff. Again, I had to pay for someone to come along with me to go into Comic-Con, to get me through the experience of where do I have to go, what do I have to do, how do I have to get there, where's the room I'm going to be presenting about Jedi stuff in. And they helped me through the entire process. And that same person frequently, if I go up to London, will meet me up in London, get me across London to wherever I need to go. He's a Londoner. He'll get me across London to wherever I need to go. He'll support me for the entire event. He helps me to set up London training courses, so that I don't have to use the phone and don't have to talk to universities and things and don't have to do any of the interacting. I can just turn up, teach, and go again. And then he supports me through the whole thing. And he supported me to go to Comic-Con to present. He supported me to go to Summer in the City, all sorts of things. So but it means I always have to pay twice for literally every single thing that I go to. And when I have gone abroad, it's the same, that I need to pay for someone who can always go with me and always support me, but they need to be someone who will always lie to me if needed. Someone who, I don't care how much they're panicking and how anxious they are and how much they think, no, this is not going how I want it to. I don't care about any of that. All I want is them to pretend to my face that everything is perfectly fine. So any worries that are going on, I want them to deal with the worry. I don't want to know about it, because or else I'll end up thinking, well, what was the point in bringing you if I'm now still worrying about these things myself because you're worrying about them. So I want someone who just gets me through everything and essentially clears the path for me. Yeah, so my video about Greta was very specifically about how autism can present. So they were saying, there was comments like, oh, look at the weird facial expression, the fact that she doesn't show any facial expressions, and look at the weird way that she answers questions, and the weird way she stared at Donald Trump, and look at the weird way she couldn't seem to cut. She's obviously some stooge who's being fed answers, because she couldn't seem to answer anyone when she was asked questions by interviewers, and yet she could, read a script out to the people when she's presenting what she's talking about. And the things people were saying, it was like, well, these are about how she presents, and that's what I had a problem with. And so that's what I was raising, saying, look, these negative things you're saying about how Greta presents, that's just because she's autistic. That's just normal like I would present probably just about the same. And that's what I made the video about her presentation, and saying, here's some stuff about autism, here's about like um, lack of facial expressions, and struggling in social kinds of situations where people are trying to have a bit of banter with you and what have you. Here's about that stuff. I never once, I sort of said at the beginning, this isn't about all the climate change stuff. It's not anything to do with that. I'm just talking about her presentation as a human being who's autistic, to try and clear up all of the aggression and hate and negativity about her way of presenting herself, so that you understand what what an autistic person can present like, because it seems people are being horrible to her because of her presentation of autism, and I'm giving people the benefit of the doubt that they're ignorant of that, and that that's what we're talking about. um, but I still got obviously attacked and told that I'm a government shill, because, and that's why I made the video and all this sort of rubbish. Can hypnosis be used with a beep or a sound? You can trigger hypnosis with sounds and things. You can connect things. I've hypnotized people with drums, like the one I've got on the floor next to me here. I've hypnotized people. There's the video of me hypnotizing someone by just tapping on my shelf in time with their heart rate. And then I start slowing the tapping down, and their heart rate starts slowing down. And then you notice them beginning to relax, and their breathing starts slowing, and they're blinking, their eyes start defocusing. And so I've done that. I've hypnotized people with singing bowls, just setting one of those off and asking people to focus their attention on that. Yeah, that was the stupid thing. They're attacking a 13-year-old child. When Elvis is, I don't think it went ahead because of the lockdown happening. But they were going to do Elvis's uh, Hawaii concert live, sort of aired across multiple cinemas on the same night, similar to what they did with the '68 comeback special in 2018. And I was going to go to that, and then I thought, nope, there's not any chance at all that I'd be able to guarantee I can find someone reliable who will go with me. So I just didn't even bother buying tickets. Turned out that had I bought tickets, it probably would have been cancelled anyway, because I think it was in April. My chair's rubbing against things now. But yeah, there are positives and negatives to being autistic, like there is to everything. There are positives and negatives to being extrovert and to being introvert, to being someone who's very connected with your emotions, to being someone who's not very connected with your emotions. Everything kind of has a positive side and challenges that go with it. Yep. But yeah, with drums are quite an interesting way to hypnotize people. If you've got drums that have multiple different things you can hit, um, because you can then set different bits up for different rhythms. So you can hit something in time with someone's blinking. Oh, I'm hitting the thing the computer's on. That's probably going to be annoying. You can hit something in time with someone's blinking. You can hit a different sound in time with their breathing, another sound in time with their heart rate, and you can start just getting some rhythms going um, among multiple different rhythms you see in the client. And then you can start influencing that and slowing things down and what have you. So you pace the person using those rhythms first, and then you lead the person by altering the speed of the different rhythms. Uh, well, with me, it's I think I just heard something. I can't remember what song it was. One of his later songs. I'm not a fan particularly of his earlier stuff. I find it's often far too fast paced for me. So some of his ballads are fine, but I find some of it far too far paced and too much screeching sounds in it. Um, but I think it was something that I like singers who go into hypnosis, and I've noticed that from a relatively young age, like a young teen, that the singers I resonate with are those who are so absorbed in the music that they essentially are one with what they're doing, um, rather than the music being something they're just, So rather than, I used to always use the example of how Cliff Richard can, especially when he was younger, could be note perfect in what he was singing. He could sound just perfect in everything he was doing, but it sounded like a robot doing the singing. It sounded like artificial. It was just perfect. And then Elvis Presley would sing something and it wouldn't necessarily be note perfect, and it wouldn't be, well, it just wouldn't have that level of perfectionism to it, but it would have something extra. It would have, he would be what he's singing. There wouldn't be there wouldn't be like, I am doing a task here. It would be, I'm living this while I'm doing it, if that makes sense. So it was that kind of drawed me in. That I never, I didn't know Elvis was famous, so to speak. When I first heard Elvis's songs, I was in the middle of a park. There was like a party thing. I don't know, like it was school holiday, and there's a big concerty thing going on. And the DJ there was playing different music. And one thing the DJ played was an Elvis Presley song, and I heard it and instantly thought, whoever that singer is, that was different to literally everything that was played around that piece of music. And so I went up and, or I didn't go up, I was near the front. And as the DJ was finishing with different bits of music, he was taking the cassette tapes out of his setup and was just saying, who wants the tape that I was just playing then? And was then just giving them to people. Not a single other person said they wanted the cassette tape he took out of his machine, except for me. So obviously I got the cassette tape. And so that wasn't, I didn't know who he was by name or anything at that point. I had just heard this song, and it was only afterwards that I then knew who his name was. So it was, that's how I ended up kind of liking his music, because he was someone who seemed to go into trance while he sung. And ever since, the music I've liked has had to move me in some way. It's had to evoke some kind of emotion or make me want to physically move. And that can be from quite a wide range of different genres. But I'm not such a fan, for example, of stuff that's really fast and really heavy. And then I'm not a fan of most female voices because I find them too high pitched and screechy and screamy and stuff. Um, I'm not a fan of a lot of things like a lot of the Beatles tracks, which just sound the same and sound like there's no emotion to it, there's no feeling to it. It just sounds like literally whole albums could just be the same song. Um, I have never sung along to a song in my life, as in like out of a context, like not like where you're just alone or whatever. I've never sung along to a song. I would never, like, if someone put some music on in a car, I would never sing along to the song in a car. The only time I'm likely to sing along to a song, which is incredibly rare, would be if it was like at karaoke or something. But that would be ridiculously rare and would only be in front of very, very, very select people. Um, so Jimi Hendrix, I've not been a particular fan one way or the other. It's just not something I've listened to much. But as most of you know, I like Katie Melua. She's a female singer who I'd say I quite like the work of, and have all of her albums and everything. And her In Winter album with the Gory Woman's Choir is a brilliant album and very moving. And I like Meatloaf. It's a shame that he can't really sing particularly nowadays, but he still, his albums over the last few years have been okay. It's just like when he's singing live now, it's kind of, he can't do it. I've pretty much never met. Well, my best friend, I think I turned into an Elvis fan. He likes Elvis and is happy to sing lots of Elvis. Um, Abby quite likes Elvis. I wouldn't say that it would be her first choice of music, but yeah, she likes Elvis and appreciates Elvis and stuff. I would never sing in a shower. That makes no sense to me. And definitely don't have DJing skills. I've got very little interest generally in music, as in sort of artists' music. I do listen to music, but it's always for the feeling. It's always, and I don't move like Abby and myself went to Maroon 5, and I did the videoing because I had no interest in, Abby's there kind of dancing and doing whatever you do at concerts. I'm there thinking, why isn't everyone quietly sat? We're here to watch this group. We've paid a fortune to watch these people perform. Why isn't everyone sitting politely in their seat watching the performance? Why is everyone joining in and waving their arms around and jumping up and down and dancing around and all the rest of it? Why aren't people just politely sitting down with their mouths shut watching the performance rather than interrupting and ruining the performance by screaming over it and waving their arms and moving around, all that rubbish? And so obviously I did the videoing like on my camera and taking photos of Adam Levine and the others, because I wasn't moving at all. I was able to stand there like that. So I've never understood this whole why you would move or why you would think, oh my God, have you heard this song? And then people start singing to a song in a pub and you think, why are you singing to the song? Literally, it's playing. You can't hear it playing if you're singing to it. Shut your mouth and listen. It doesn't make any sense to me why people do that. I just think, if you're listening to music, listen to music. If your job is to sing the song, then sing the song. But don't sing the song when you're paying someone to sing the song, or sing the song when you're perhaps paying to listen to the song. And and why you would sing at home to music is just confusing, because again, you've put the music on to listen to. You haven't put the music on to sing. If you want to sing, don't put the music on, just sing, because I actually can't hear the music. So yeah, so the whole thing does just confuse me, this over involvement that people get. I don't understand people being involved in things. I don't understand like why people go, say, to a football match and they start screaming and cheering and chanting when people score goals and things. Don't you just sit? Why not just sit quietly, watch what's going on, and then leave? There's no need for all of this overreaction, excess of emotion, and all that rubbish. I've never understood any of that. I just like nice, quiet, polite, non-emotional responses. I don't like when people get all emotional about it. That drives me away from those situations. As soon as I know, like, I would never go to a football game or something, and I'd never really want to be in a concert if people are going to be getting involved. I want people to behave in a civilized manner. There's no need for all this bizarre emotion that makes no sense. Yeah, I've never understood fans particularly. It's like meeting famous people. I've never understood why meeting a famous person. It's not to say that I don't admire certain people, and that I would think, "Oh, I'd like to meet them because I'd like to have a conversation with them about whatever the topic is." Um, but there's no one who I think, "Oh, that, I'm going to swoon," or I don't know, whatever it is that people. I'm not going to start feeling nervous around meeting a human being. Why would you feel nervous meeting a human being? When I met David Attenborough a couple of years ago, he's just a man. You say, hello, I like your work. It would be nice to have time to have a conversation. That won't happen. And then um, you move on. It confuses me, the kind of, I don't know, the screaming fans type thing. You just treat people as normal human beings. No, definitely wouldn't fit. I've got the phone call message from Paul McKenna. I wouldn't answer my phone to him because I didn't know who was phoning me. And so Abby was sat beside me saying, "Answer the phone. It could be an important message." And I was saying, "Nope, it's a withheld number. I'm not answering the phone." And then I've got the answer phone message with Paul McKenna sort of saying, "Hi, it's Paul McKenna here." And he was just phoning to say he liked my Look Into My Eyes book. But yeah, I wouldn't feel nervous. He's a human being. I would happily sit down and have dinner with him and talk about psychology and stuff like that. I'd happily sit down. I've met Stephen Fry, and he's a human being. I've met Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, Darren Brown, Shaken Stevens, all sorts of people. They're just human beings. Yeah, exactly. You pay money to listen to the audience sing. It's even worse when the singer holds the microphone out. It's fine doing that for a brief moment or something at a key point that feels really emotional, like in terms of, you think this shows that these people like this singer's work, but then you think when the singer's singing, let it get back to the singer. And if the singer spends too much time holding a microphone out, you just think, well, that was half an hour of my time wasted on listening to people who couldn't sing the songs that I wanted to listen to, singing the songs. Um, yeah, I can't imagine following people. Because there's, I think it's Live Aid Queen performance where they hold the microphone out. Freddie Mercury holds the microphone out while he's having the banter backwards and forwards with the audience, and it works really well while he's doing that, and you can see his pleasure on his face at the response the crowd is giving him, and the appreciation for the music. But once it's back him singing, I want to have just heard Freddie Mercury singing, not the audience around me singing. But yeah, in the answer phone message, Paul McKenna seemed very friendly. It's just that I didn't answer the phone to him. And I've weighed it up. If I'd answered the phone, I wouldn't have a recorded answer phone message, but I would have been able to have an entire conversation potentially, and I never know where that might have led. But by not having, but by not answering it, I've only got the answer phone message. So I doubt you'll get to hear it, because obviously he left it on my private message answer phone. So it's not something I'm likely to share. There's nothing obviously particularly confidential about it. It's someone saying they like my book. It's just the fact that he'd phoned me to leave me the message, rather than it being like a public comment on Facebook or Twitter or something that I might have retweeted or re-Facebooked. Yeah, Bruce Campbell would be interesting. Who's Michael J. White? Well, I think obviously in relation to someone potentially famous, there's the risk that if their number wasn't unknown or withheld, that I might then right now be saying, oh, by the way, here's Paul McKenna's telephone number, and then sharing it, and then he gets inundated with lots of phone calls from people who are crazy fans. No, I don't know if I know who he is. I'm sure if I saw him, I might recognize him, but I'm not really good with names. So unless someone's someone who I actively seek out, say all their movies, for example, I normally don't remember the names of people. But yeah, I can imagine that if I was famous, I would probably, if I randomly called someone who wasn't like a normal close friend or whatever, not that I would do that, but if I did, I can imagine withholding the number, because I would think, just in case you, the person who I don't know, who I'm calling for whatever reason, might end up sharing my number with the world. I don't necessarily want my number to get out to the point where I get inundated with phone calls. I have had some fans so when I was on YouTube initially back in 2007, I reached a point where on the YouTube used to have charts, kind of telling you channel rankings for different, like for the how-to section would then be like, here's the top 100 how-to channels, here's the top 100 I don't know, whatever the other headings are. I'm in the how-to channels normally, but here's the top 100 how-to channels. Then you've got like, here's the top channels under these different weird headlines. And my channel back in the early days was often in the top 100 worldwide of how-to channels, because that's what I've always had them under, because I was always posting hypnosis videos, etc., teaching how to do hypnosis, or how to overcome depression, how to overcome anxiety, etc. And so mine was frequently in the top 100 in the how-to categories in like 2010-ish, shortly before I left YouTube. and it reached a point where it sort of claimed I was 33rd most viewed guru, whatever guru is. I think it's like growing channel or something, that seems to be getting very popular. And so my channel was very, very popular, and I was constantly inundated with vast numbers of uh, messages and what have you. And back in those days, you also had all the private messages on YouTube. So I was constantly inundated with pages of private messages um, that I would never get round to reading any of them. They're normally really long messages that I just would never have time to read or reply to. I did start trying to initially, and then I'd have all the comments on all the videos, and had like 600 odd videos on my channel, 600 or 700 videos. Um, and there was, and I had a vast amount of trolls and hate comments and things like that as well. But there were some people who would go to the extent of being so desperate to want to talk to me because I wouldn't be necessarily, well, even if I was actually responding. So some people I could respond literally as I do now, in quite a lot of depth sometimes, to make sure I'm helping them as much as possible. And yet some people would be kind of contacting me literally 30, 40, 50 times a day on YouTube. And then because I think, oh, I can't be doing with this. So I would kind of say, look, I can't respond to you as often as you're posting. And so I would slow down how much I can respond. And then I would stop responding, saying, look, I can't keep responding because this is just too much. And then some people would start, because of being a practicing hypnotherapist, my telephone number and stuff is around. And so they'd then start phoning. And this would be people from other countries. And they'd start phoning literally all day and all night. And then Abby was getting annoyed because I'd have my phone going off at stupid hours of the night. I'd have people eventually trying to go through Abby to try and contact me because I'm not responding at 3 a.m. to these phone messages and things. And so, so you do sort of get this where you think, if I could avoid having much, so nowadays, if I got well enough known that I could think, you know what, I can now finally end my hypnotherapy connections totally, so that I don't have to keep myself in the loop with hypnotherapy and keep myself able to, practice if I choose to, etc. I would probably get rid of all that, including then getting rid of my telephone number being out there and my email address and all these things, so that it limits it down to just social media, because then you can avoid the social media. You can decide, I'm just not going to look on Twitter for a while, or I'm just not going to look at Facebook for a while, or whatever. Or I'm not going to look at the YouTube comments page for a while, and all these sort of things. You can kind of then avoid it a bit and limit yourself a bit if it gets overwhelming. Because obviously I have to fit in time to do all of that stuff. I think I shared the other day how in March I had over 1,000 comments on YouTube. YouTube every month says, here's how your channel has done. And it says things like, here's how many likes you got over the last month. Here's how many comments you got on your videos over the last month. Here's how many views you got, etc. And obviously it pointed out that I'd had over 1,000 comments on my videos. And I know some of those comments are comments saying, why have you not replied to my comment? Some of them are saying, why have you not replied to my comment, when I have actually replied to the person's comment multiple times, and they still say, you're not replying to my comments. And I reply to the comments telling me I'm not replying to the comments, pointing out I am actually replying. So that's, you do get some people who, in the past, I haven't had it since coming back on YouTube in 2015, but in the past, I have had people who ended up being very overwhelming in their kind of being in your face thing. I've not met Prince Charles. I obviously took some photos when Harry and Meghan visited Chichester. I managed to get some good photos of them and technically met them, but other than them, and I went. My uncle got OBE, MBE, I don't know, one or the other, whatever the first one is, and he and I went up to his investiture at Windsor Castle to watch him get knighted. So I've been there for that. I don't think I've met any other. Obviously, seen the Queen. Everyone's seen the Queen in Britain, I think. Yeah, I feel sorry for young people nowadays. With the fact that you can't escape contact. So, like when someone's bullying at school, in the old days, it would be they bully you at school, but then it kind of stays at school. That assuming that it's only bullying at school, once you're home, at least you know your home environment is a safe place. Now, the bullying and other things can go on outside of school. It can carry on, like even when you're at home, even overnight. It must be a nightmare for kids nowadays. Yes, I can't imagine Americans have necessarily seen the Queen, but the Queen does so many appearances over here that it's got to be reasonably rare for someone to not have kind of been at the front of something when she's doing something, whether whatever the event is, across a lifetime. Yeah, nowadays most comments I obviously just take things largely with a pinch of salt. I normally just click thumbs up and click the heart so that you know that it was me. Because the annoying thing on YouTube is you don't know that it was me that gave you a thumbs up if I give you a thumbs up. So if I give a thumbs up to a comment, I always click the heart as well so that you know it was me that gave the thumbs up. YouTube tries to say that we should only use the hearts for those exceptional comments to make those people feel special. But my view is, because the person doesn't know that it was you that gave them the thumbs up, I have had people who I've given thumbs up to their comment where it's just like, I don't know, great video, really helped me to sleep. And I will literally get dozens of comments that are like that every day. Great video, really helped me to sleep. And so if I actually went through on my mobile phone, which is what I'm normally reading these on, with predictive text as well, trying to respond to every single comment, especially when there's multiple comments on one video that might have come through because the video's just gone live at 4 a.m. that morning. And I try and go through each comment thinking, I can't just say thank you to, I can just say thank you to everything, but I have to then type that out. But I think I want to do something a bit different if I'm typing. So I just think I can't comment on literally everything. Predictive text just ends up annoying me, even when I'm trying to type something simple. Somehow, I could type thank you and it will come out as some completely different sentence that I never even said. So I always give it thumbs up, click the smiley, the heart thing, so that you've got the heart. I'm the one that has seen your comment, and that way, hopefully, you know that I've seen it and acknowledged that I'm grateful for that sort of like this video kind of comment. Yes, we've talked about eyes before, and people said it was an unpleasant conversation. Comments complaining? What are we on now? Are we back to eyes again? Are murder podcasts famous? Whoops, just keep hitting the chair today. I know that a lot of people like murdery things nowadays, or like mysteries and thrillers and stuff. Yeah, I don't listen to any podcasts I don't listen to anything particularly. I always kind of hope to manage to listen. I only ever listen to music when I'm out walking. Like if I'm walking along the streets, if I'm walking out in the woods or something, then obviously that creates its own sounds. I don't need music. And normally, what I have playing in my ears is either relaxation music or natural sounds. So even if I'm walking along the streets, I've normally got bird sounds and things playing in my ears with noise cancelling headphones on, so then I don't have to hear the actual streets. Yeah, I've not got much enjoyment with true crime stuff. I find it's normally quite boring, and the crimes are rarely that creative. Yeah, I find some serial killers fascinating from a psychological perspective. Some get overdone though. I find if you don't want to be talked to, you just say to the person, "You're boring. I'm not paying attention to you. I don't want to talk to you." I find that often works reasonably well at stopping people. Not everyone. I know some autistic people who, when I've said, "Look, what you talk about is so boring. I've got no interest in it," they carry on anyway. But generally, people who aren't autistic, they walk away, which is good. And even better, they frequently don't come back to you. And so I quite like that. I quite like the idea of making people go away. No, not you.
Just the water.
Can do. Abby's just supplying me with water. But yeah, I don't really understand. I've always tried to grasp what makes someone a friend. To me, a friend is someone who you choose to spend time with. The Dragon's Fire series is an interesting one. So there's obviously the prequel, as you know, and then there's the 6-part Dragon's Fire series, and the story doesn't end obviously at the end of the 6 episodes. You now know, because of the prequel, how it all began, obviously. So I call it a prequel because it comes before the Dragon's Fire series, but it was actually released a year earlier than the Dragon's Fire series, as you would know. So there's the one that comes before them that sets up from like 100 or whatever years beforehand. Thank you. So the one before it sets up the sort of an introduction to how things all got going, and then how that got dealt with initially. Then the Dragon's Fire series deals with kind of 100 years or whatever later, and that middle part. And then you've got I know kind of some ideas afterwards, but I was going to do them as just individual standalone episodes, so to speak. So I was going to do which they are all standalone episodes, but I wasn't going to tell people that they're a series. And that was kind of it's a positive and a negative. It's quite popular on my channel, but by making it a series, what I found happened was that people end up saying, oh, my reason for not listening to episode 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is because I'm always asleep in 5 minutes of episode 1. And I want to know what happens in episode 1 before I listen to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So people don't ever listen to anything other than episode 1 because they say, well, I never make it through 5 minutes of episode 1, so why listen to the rest? Whereas when I've done series where I don't tell you that it's a series, people then just listen to each one as a unique story without paying attention to the fact that it follows on from a previous thing. And so that's kind of the mistake I made, and why I never continued doing the Dragon's Fire series, because I thought, well, how do I do it? Because for one, it involves a lot more violence than all my other stories. It involves dragon slaying and stuff. And so I do get people who obviously comment saying, I'm trying to fall asleep and relax, and you've got this thing with dragon slaying. My argument is there are plenty of people who literally listen to the audio books of The Hobbit or Lord of the Rings or any of these other kind of fantasy, most likely now Game of Thrones and things. They'll happily listen to all of those as audiobooks to fall asleep to. And if they're happy to do that, why would you not also be just as happy to listen to my Dragon's Fire series, which involves a bit of slaying? So I do want to revisit it. I've got plans to revisit it. If I can find time, I want to revisit it this year. There's also other stuff I want to do. It's a shame I don't know any artists. I would love to know a graphic artist, someone who can do graphic novels, or else I'm going to have to learn how to do graphic novels. This is how I normally do things. I obsess about something. So I want graphic novels of my Dragon's Fire series. And as I can't seem to find an affordable, as in relatively cheap, but still very good, because what I've been quoted so far is about 80,000 or something for someone to do the entire series, which is a little bit out of my price range. But what I'd like is to do graphic novels of the Dragon's Fire series, because my thinking is, because if you look at the numbers for how many watch all of them in one video, that's got quite a good number of views, and every month it has very good number of views. But nobody ever pays attention to the others. And when I then think of releasing new videos, I think, well, the reason no one pays attention to the others is because they're individual episodes, and people always just say, I'm asleep in the first 5 minutes. I'm never going to listen to episode 2 because I can never remember what happened in episode 1. And yet people do listen, even though they have the same problem. They fall asleep in 5 minutes of episode 1. They'll listen to the whole thing because they know they might gradually get through it. So what I want is to create graphic novel. Before I try and record more, I want to make graphic novels of the 6 plus the prequel, ideally. So that's 7. 7 graphic novels, so probably the 6, and then the prequel released afterwards to go back. And then, yeah, that's the problem. If I then said there's more that comes afterwards, you might say, well, I'll listen to that when I know what's happened in these ones. So what I was thinking was if I had a set of graphic novels that told the story, I can then get myself into things like Comic-Con, selling the graphic novels, signing the graphic novels. I can do things like t-shirts with, say, all the characters on the t-shirt in graphic novel, really cool print style. I can do posters of it to try and raise awareness of the Dragon's Fire series, so that then when I say I'm going to do more, people will then and you can listen to it as a sleep meditation, or you can just listen to it because you want the story. Then I can do that because it's off the back of knowing that there's this whole audience for those characters and for that series who want to know what happens next, who will then listen when I start releasing the ones afterwards, because the prequel sets up the ice dragon and how the ice dragon first arrived, and all the issues around that. And the wizard is wondering how this dragon got released onto the world, etc. The wizard deals with that dragon, and then like 100 years later, the wizard's apprentice ends up having to rush down to the village. The wizard is doing his bit to try and help, and the wizard ends up being injured. He's not dead. I never mention he's dead. I have some people that say, oh, it's really sad the wizard dies. I never actually say the wizard dies. He just gets defeated and he can't go on the mission to try and do it. He went on the mission 100 years earlier. He can't go on the mission to kind of complete this thing. So then the wizard's apprentice becomes a wizard, a fully fledged wizard, through his mission of going, gathering this band of people together, or characters together, and going through all the different realms, defeating all the dragons, and they bring peace to the land. But right at the start, obviously, it points out there was peace. The dragons were all fine. What has happened to bring these dragons out, who are like violent and causing all this havoc? And so the person who brought all these dragons out hasn't been captured. And so I know already, I've got a pad over here on my shelf that has a chunk of stuff about the story world, about the different characters in the world, the different parts of the world, the different beings that are in the world, all these different things. I've got it all kind of written down, and have done for years and years and years. But it is just finding someone who's affordable enough. So obviously I'm always happy for you to introduce us and see if they're of a price and a style as well that works. As I say, the only other way is that I would end up having to learn to paint graphic novels myself. And I've already started trying to do that, except the lockdown has kind of got in the way of me doing this. But I've already started to look into the idea of just learn to do all the graphic artwork myself, and then I can just make the whole thing myself. Literally, I'm then responsible for the entire thing, and it stops having the complication. But an actual person who knows what they're doing would be so much quicker at making the graphic novels than I would. I've got lots of apps on Slumber, lots of stories on Slumber, and other apps as well. But Slumber, they regularly ask me. They'll regularly contact me and say, "Can I have another, 3 or 4 stories of yours?" And they'll request certain stories. I don't have any choice over what they request, but they'll occasionally just say, "We'd like to request these stories. Am I happy to share them?" And then they pay me to have those stories on the app. But yeah, so obviously the Dragon's Fire series I like. That was one that I really wanted to do, and I've always wanted to write a Lord of the Rings style novel. But again, my reason for choosing a graphic novel over an actual novel, because I could easily, if I went dark for probably, say, 6 months, so literally stopped doing all the social media stuff, stopped doing all the work I currently do, all of this. Obviously, the live streams are something that's just for the amount of live streams is something for just this moment in time. But if I either got in a place where I had scheduled a whole bunch of YouTube videos, so I didn't have to do YouTube for, say, 6 months, managed to cut down on my interactions on my e-courses and things, then, and got my hypnotherapy, the third hypnotherapy book out of the way, so I didn't have to keep worrying about that. If I shut myself down for 6 months, I could probably write. I can write about, I'd say comfortably. Nowadays, I'm quite a fast typer. Still not a very fast typer, but for me, I'm quite a fast typer. I can probably write about 15 to 20,000 words a day very comfortably. And so I could probably write the bulk of my my Dragon's Fire novels as actual full-on novels within probably 6 months. The difficulty is that I can't shut everything down, or my income down, essentially, for something that may not sell. So that, and so my thinking was graphic novels involve less writing, but they do involve obviously the drawing, and making sure a lot of the story is told through the images that are being created. And so it's weighing up the two. Do I go with creating a bunch of graphic novels, so 6 graphic novels, or do I create 6 actual novels that are, say, 150,000 words long per novel, telling the whole Dragon's Fire story? So it's trying to work out which would be the best option to go for, whether to go for graphic novels or actual novels. One, I can do myself 100% right now, except that I have the issue of I have to make a living while I'm writing, or the other, I can write less because I'm writing bits to go with the images, rather than writing. I think a graphic novel would usually have around 100 or so words per page on average, and so it's trying to then work out, to write the novels would require me to literally shut everything down and just focus on the novels for an extended period of time. But then I would have the novels out there and a nice series of, say, 6 novels plus the prequel, so 7 novels. It's a bit like The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. The Hobbit being the prequel, and then The Lord of the Rings, although there is more prequels like the Silmarillion and all the rest of it. But yeah, so I like the idea of novels, but also I like the idea, once I came up with it, I like the idea of the graphic novels. I'd like to see some of the fight scenes turned into graphic novel images. I like the idea of having the characters brought to life as actual images of the characters and what they would look like, and what have you. So it's, yeah, it might end up being that somehow magically I can do both, but yeah, graphic novels, it costs an awful lot of money to pay for a graphic novel artist, and I would still obviously have to write what is going to be on each page and what's going to be in each box or in each section, so that the artist knows what's going on. But yeah, if my YouTube channel suddenly did really well, and I think I might have talked about this before, that if my thinking was, well, you say a younger crowd, literally, I like graphic novels, and I know a lot of people my age who like graphic novels. Literally, graphic novels appeal to vast numbers of people, and they're a very in thing. There's a lot of females and males that like graphic novels nowadays. Actual novels allow you to have far more depth in them. So those who really want to get absorbed in the novels and want to get into the lore of it all and into like any underlying politics that might be going on in the world, or underlying religions or other spiritual beliefs or whatever, and some of the history and things like that, you can obviously explore all of that so much more fully in an actual novel. The other issue is obviously, once I write these things, say I wrote a 150,000 word novel, that also costs an awful lot of money to get it proofread and copy edited and all those sort of things. A graphic novel is less text to do that with. So there's positives and negatives to both. But if my YouTube channel was, say, double what it currently is in terms of views and everything, maybe a bit more than double, then I'd be making enough income that I probably could cut down significantly on my work, just focus on, making one. I'd probably have to cut down on one of my 2 videos a week, and then just do like the live stream and one original, whatever that came out of that live stream, original sleep meditation. That would probably give me enough time to then focus on writing for the rest of my time. I would probably cut down a bit on how much I interact with everyone. But yeah, one thing I find in my life, and I'm sure everyone finds this, is that you've got perhaps a million things you want to do, and you only have a limited amount of time to do it all in. And so you never have enough time to do all the things you want to do. So, and you don't necessarily always have all the skills you want. You want to be able to just, I want to be able to just say, for example, right, I'm going to make a graphic novel, and I whip it up. There it is, all done and dusted. Ping out a graphic novel to everyone. I want to write a proper novel as well. There you go, written it, ping it out to everyone. In reality, it all takes so much longer. It's like when you watch those, clones. That'd be brilliant. Then except that then I might spend so much time engaged in conversation with the clones that we never get any work done, because they would be interested in what I'm interested in. And we'll just be trying to transform the world together. Well, everyone already, or everyone who joins me on things like live streams, already shares, helps a lot. So obviously the way to help is to tell people about what I have going on here, to share it, spread the word, listen to stuff. The main thing is to try and have it so that YouTube thinks, oh, his own subscribers like his stuff, that means everyone else might as well. So Abby and myself have often talked about the fact that I've got around nearly 60,000 subscribers, which is a brilliant amount. And yet other channels with 60,000 or fewer subscribers, their videos get probably 3 or 4 times the amount of views as mine in the same time period. And their live streams will have significantly, like, you join a live stream of another channel with 60,000 subscribers, and that live stream will have a couple of hundred people who've joined that live chat, who are joining in and engaging in the live chat. I'm often lucky if I can make it to kind of 20 people who join me here. So obviously there's something about me, about my personality or whatever, that just doesn't resonate even with my own audience. And I have had my own audience tell me this, that they hate it when I do any talking. They just want a sleep story. They don't want anything else. Obviously not all the audience thinks that, but there are people like that. Well, the thing is, the way the people who are successful on YouTube is because they make very specific content. YouTube's first rule when you attend YouTube's own training is find one niche thing and build that one niche thing up. Don't try and deviate from that. Build that one niche thing up first. And then when you've got a reasonable audience who are very engaged and love that, obviously other bits might start getting mentioned from your subscribers, who might say, for example, people on my site sort of channel could end up saying, oh, it'd be great if you had some meditations that people can listen to as naps, like for an afternoon meditation or something like that, that's just 10 minutes long, something to listen to in the afternoon. So because of so if that was suggested, then what you're doing is, I've got this really engaged bunch of people, this really engaged audience, and my audience is now saying they'd like me to try this other bit. So then you try that other bit, and if that turns out to be successful, you might add that. But YouTube is very strict on how it treats a channel as a one thing channel. And so whatever your channel's popular for, that's the one thing. So for example, if I wanted my channel which was the dilemma I had obviously before, if I wanted my channel just to be about, say, autism, as it kind of was, then I would have to focus solely on autism. I'd have to make sure that any videos that get lots of views that aren't autism related are deleted from my channel, because that's the only way to make sure YouTube will then say Dan's channel is about autism. And then that way they now start recommending it as an autism channel, etc. And so, but you need your audience to be engaged around that topic. And so obviously back in like 2018, I had all the conversations about, do I just delete? My sleep stories seem to have started becoming popular. This is really irritating, because obviously that's not what my channel is about. So I was having conversations with viewers about, do I just delete all these sleep stories, because that way my channel can focus on autism and mental health like it's supposed to, like it has done since 2007. And obviously I was happy to just delete all the sleep stories and everything, because it makes no difference to me. It's just you press delete. But a lot of people kept saying, no, please, please don't delete the sleep stories. We find it really helpful. We find it helps us to sleep, etc., etc. And so I had this dilemma where I wasn't deleting the sleep stories. I've tried the whole two channel thing. I tried to set up a separate autism channel, separate mental health channel. I run the Mind Changers with Dr. David Lewis. Being self-employed means I can't spend the hours. I sort of explained all this like back in 2018, where I was saying, okay, I'm gonna, because you're telling me don't get rid of the sleep stories, I'm gonna have to, initially, this is like May or June or whatever, 2018, I said, right, I'm gonna have to stop making any content for this channel, because I'm gonna have to focus on setting up a new channel that's about what my channel has always been about. And then I had like 20 something subscribers after like a year and a half or 2 years or whatever of running another channel. I still only managed to get up to like 25 or whatever subscribers, trying to focus a new channel on autism. And so trying to get a brand new channel out there, I was putting in the same number of hours as I do to this channel, but I was putting it into another channel, and essentially neglecting this channel. And so that just meant that it was like, I can't afford to be using all these hours to not make any income, because my channel wasn't monetized or anything. The autism one, like the Mind Changers channel, isn't monetized. So those channels weren't monetized because I wasn't at the level of being able to monetize them. And this channel was monetized, but I wasn't doing anything on it anymore. I had scheduled videos already, so the public weren't going to notice straight away that I wasn't doing anything, because I'd already done all the work and scheduled it across the whole year. I literally, in 2017, in December 2017, I recorded 52 videos and then scheduled them for the entire whole of 2018. with the idea that it would free up my time in the future. And so that was why I was able to do this for a chunk of time. But I couldn't get the channel off the ground, couldn't keep committing to doing that. So, and there was no way I'd be able to divide my time and give the right amount of attention to more than one channel. And lots of YouTubers have this problem, that they set up a main channel and then they end up finding their second channel is the one that's more popular and the one perhaps they enjoy more, which is why they set that up separately, because they think this is what I really want to be doing, so I'm going to do this. And then they end up never going back to their main channel because they don't have time to do their main channel when they're doing their secondary channel. So a lot of YouTubers end up in that position where you just don't have enough hours in the day to do the channel you're really passionate about doing, and then do a channel you don't care about but are supposed to be doing because you need to generate an income and whatever else. So I then went back before the end of 2018 to, no, forget it. I'm going to have to just do all of this on this channel. So I came straight back here, carried on doing autism and mental health on this channel, not doing all the sleep stories on this channel. And for like 6 or 7 months, there was no new sleep stories created. And yet this channel carried on growing based on the sleep stories. And so I had a dilemma. Do I then scrap the sleep stories? Do I just write off the channel and think I can't do meditation and I can't do mental health and autism? I'm not going to do the sleep stories. So let's just forget about YouTube altogether. Or, as I decided in September, do I just bite the bullet and accept that what people want is a sleep stories channel? The way YouTube wants it to be is that one channel focuses on one topic. I've got a friend called Daniel Jones, not myself, not my alter ego or anything like that. He's an autistic YouTuber, and he was saying, he'd been in talks with YouTube over in San Francisco during an event, and YouTube said, because he was saying, I'm thinking of interviewing different people who do different types of channels. And they said, don't do it. If you do that and you start having your content divided by having videos that focus on different topics, not just purely autism, then your videos won't rank so well. Your audience won't necessarily like them so much because they're not exactly what the audience wants. And that means if your own audience doesn't like them, then if your own audience doesn't like it, then YouTube doesn't share it with others, because YouTube judges how much to share your videos with other people based on how much your own audience likes your stuff when it goes live. So if, for example, I release, I have seen Dan Jones, the historian, and I do have a signed copy of one of his books. And I got the signed copy of his book because it's signed by Dan Jones. And so it's nice to have a Dan Jones signed book that isn't my own book signed by Dan Jones. But yeah, so so it is sort of an awkward one. So YouTube's way of looking at it is, if a channel has, say, 60,000 subscribers, they would expect perhaps 10 or 15% of those subscribers to be actively watching the videos each time a new video comes up, especially when a video is always exactly the same time every single week, on the same day every week, so that it's got that regularity. Because that's something else YouTube wants, is that they can see that you release a video exactly the same time every single week. So I always release my sleep story 4 a.m. every Wednesday morning. And so as long as everyone knows that, then it means everyone knows, right, 4 a.m. every Wednesday morning, whatever time it is for whichever country you're in, we get the new story. And so the idea is, from YouTube's perspective, that because your audience knows you always release that video at the same time every single week, they would expect a big chunk of those people who've obviously subscribed to you because they say they watch those videos, to then watch. And if your own audience doesn't watch them, so if I launch a sleep meditation 4 a.m. on a Wednesday, and a week just before the next one comes live, so a week later, literally it's had 4,000 views or something, or 5,000 views out of 60,000 subscribers, and perhaps a lot of those views are people watching more than once, so that it's actually even fewer. So it's not 4,000 of 60,000 people have seen it. It's something like 30% of the views are from my own audience, and those 30% from my own audience, so out of those 4,000, let's say 25%, out of those 4,000, 1,000 of those views are my own 60,000 audience. And out of those 1,000, there are people who've watched the video multiple times, meaning that maybe only 500 or 600 people have actually watched, from my own audience, have actually watched that video. And so YouTube then thinks, well, 500 or 600 of his own audience watched that out of 60,000 people. We're not going to show that to anyone, because if that small percentage watches it, then why would anyone else? If the people who love him most, which obviously is what you would think subscribers are, don't like his stuff, why would someone else? That's YouTube's, that's how they talk about, that's what they say happens with the algorithm, is that it looks at things like that, and kind of makes its decisions based on, would someone else like this? If the people themselves don't like it, would someone else? So yeah, whereas other channels would have 60,000 subscribers, they'll release a video and a week later it'll have like 20,000 views or whatever. And so there's a good chance, if they had the same kind of success rate, those 20,000 views, perhaps 5,000 of them are their own subscribers. My assumption would be, if it's my YouTube channel, the only thing I post on YouTube now are sleep meditations. I literally don't post anything else on here. So I do these live ones currently, which aren't really on anything. They're on whatever people ask me questions on. But my actual posting, I only ever post sleep stories. I don't post anything else. Every Wednesday morning, I post a sleep story. Every Saturday morning, I post an old sleep story, but with added sound effects. And that's it. So I don't post videos about autism. I don't post videos about mental health anymore. I don't post videos about hypnosis, how to do hypnosis. I don't promote the channel as having anything to do with anything other than sleep meditations. So the entire focus of this channel is just sleep meditations. And obviously going forward, the plan is that I would be involved, or the plan has always been since like 2000 and, well, probably 2010ish, that I'm trying to avoid being known in any way in the hypnotherapy field. And since September last year, I resigned to trying to avoid being known in the autism field. I thought, I can't spread myself too thinly and trying to be all over the place. So I try to just focus on sleep stories of what people want on YouTube. That's all the channel's about. I try not to have any focus on anything else other than that. I try not to respond. Obviously, if it's in a chat like this, it's different, but I try not to respond or engage with questions too much about anything else. I try to distance myself from all other topics like hypnosis and autism and things like that, broader, and just try to kind of limit it a bit. Yeah, Daniel Jones, the Aspie World guy. I doubt that Dan Jones, the historian, has a signed copy of my book. But yeah, because it was interesting, because I remember with Dan Jones, so the Aspie World, he passed 10,000 subscribers about 3 or 4 months after, before I passed 10,000 subscribers. So we'd interacted with each other because we were. He's the guy that set up the Church of Jediism, and so he was wanting me to help out in relation to the Jedi stuff, and so I was kind of going to do some courses for him. So, as many of you know, I did a series of courses on Jediism for Dan Jones, the Aspie World. But he had just passed 10,000. I passed 10,000 a few months later, but my channel at that point was going downhill in relation to autism because my stories were becoming more and more popular. His channel was going uphill in relation to autism. His channel was solely focused on autism. Mine, irritatingly, had probably about 20 sleep meditations on it from over all the years, and they were too popular for my channel. So the viewers were all tuning in for that, and my autism videos, which I was posting very regularly at the time, I was posting weekly autism videos, were going downhill in popularity, and were getting more and more comments, sort of hate comments on them, from people who were subscribed and saying, I subscribed because you tell sleep stories. I don't care if you're autistic, and if you've have had mental health problems, I'm not interested in that. So obviously I'd shared videos about depression. I'd shared videos about about me having depression. I'd shared videos about me when I was suicidal and all stuff like that. And I'd get comments on those videos saying, don't care about all this, stop talking about this, got no interest in all this. And so, yeah, so my channel was sort of heading that way in relation to the videos that I was posting and wanting people to like. And his channel, Dan's channel, was going the other way. And so we ran a bunch of events together, YouTube events, Comic-Con events, things like that. But yeah, it's just unfortunate. Yeah, he's now 130,000 subscribers, and in the same time period, I've only made it to 60,000 subscribers. But his is well known for autism, and he gets invited to all the courses for autism and gets invited to talk about autism, all the things I was doing as a professional and as being an autistic person. But normally it's, oh no, we've already got a Dan Jones who's a YouTuber who's talking about autism. We don't need another Dan Jones who's a YouTuber to come and talk about autism. And this Dan Jones is a proper, he's an autism YouTuber because he talks about autism on his YouTube channel. We don't need someone who talks about sleep on their YouTube channel who's just an autistic YouTuber. So I don't really get invited. So that was also part of my thinking of, it's, my channel's too far gone, really, unless I just deleted all of my sleep stuff. It would be too far gone for me to go back to being someone who gives autism talks. So I don't do that anymore. I never offer to give any autism talks anymore. I rarely accept to give autism talks if someone asks me. It has to be someone who I know who's asking me as a favor. So I rarely accept to give autism talks or anything. I don't offer to give autism talks. I don't set up autism talks anymore. The same with mental health, the same with hypnosis. I just try to be known as kind of the guy that does these sleep videos, even if I think that's a bit of a shallow thing. And to me, even though I know many of you have told me in the past about how much you see the sleep videos as being incredibly helpful, and I'm very aware that they are. It's I see it as almost like being an incredibly qualified plumber, an experienced plumber who only ever turns up at houses and does one job. Turns up at houses, tightens something, and walks off again. And obviously, that involves a lot of uh, skill to know how to do that one thing. But you then think, oh, it'd be nice if someone could use some of my other skills here somewhere. So yeah, so I just feel that many of my skills don't get used by how I do this channel. And even when I am using many of the skills, unless I explain them, I do get the comments that kind of treat the stories as just being shallow, like I wanted this story just to be ABC and not all this weird way of doing it. Yeah, I wouldn't set up a second channel now. Following this kind of lockdown period where I've done all of these live videos, I've kind of talked to Dr. David Lewis about the idea of, because I don't do much for the Mind Changers. We don't do much on the channel anymore because the plan of the Mind Changers YouTube channel was that you've got Dr. David Lewis, who's a psychologist, neuroscientist, etc. And you've got me, who does kind of mental health stuff and can talk about autism or whatever. We set up the Mind Changers with the idea of people submitting questions that they would like people to answer, like answered, and then we would make videos answering all these questions. So that was the idea, that we would receive questions and then we would just answer them and make videos answering like individual questions. And I was saying to David that with the response I've had here, after this has all ended, this whole lockdown period, it'll probably be worth maybe once a week having a Mind Changers clinic or something, however it gets worded. Something where I'm there for a couple of hours, just engaging with people, answering any questions people have over on the Mind Changers website, so that it keeps it off of here, because I know this is, well, as many of you do, once this video goes live, like after it's finished airing and it's been processed by YouTube, once it goes live, it will start losing viewers. It will start losing subscribers by people who are annoyed that I've made this live video. And so it's easier to have it on a smaller channel and just let it either grow or it doesn't. And then anyone who's interested will know where they can get that one-to-one kind of, oh, I've got some questions about anxiety, or I've got some questions about depression, or I've got some questions about OCD, or I've got some questions about trauma, or I've got some questions about how you work therapeutically with this type of person or that type of person, or I've got questions about how you would work with autistic clients, or I've got questions about how I can help my autistic child, or I've got questions about how, as an autistic person, I can help myself in this way or that way, or to get a job, or to help with my relationships, or whatever it happens to be. So the idea is then you're there doing that. So the Mind Changers channel we've ran for a number of years now, but it's never been particularly popular. So we both kind of ran out of new content that we could think of to make, because no one was asking us questions to make content about, and we both were busy as well. So that's still part of the that's a plan that I've thought of based on doing these live videos here. Yeah, so the reason I haven't done the opposite, the reason I haven't deleted all the autism videos is for the same reason, that there are people who find them interesting. So I obviously keep them here. Well, as long as I've got my bills paid, I'm very happy not to do other work. So a bit like with therapy, my reason for working as a therapist one-to-one is always I needed the income. That's first and foremost why I would have ever worked one-to-one with any clients, is that I need to make a living. And I'm fascinated by the topics, but I don't like social interaction. So I don't ideally want to have to help clients one-to-one and actually sit with them and work with them, but it pays the bills, and so you have to do it. The same with teaching. I don't mind running things where I get to explore the topics I want in a very free form kind of way, where it's like, today, right at this second, I want to do this, that, and the other and explore these topics. But they're not something I can ever charge for, in my opinion, because it's going to be, you're doing what I want to do. It's not going to be what you can't come with an agenda. You're going to do what I want to do. It's a group around me almost. So I wouldn't charge for those sort of things. For actual training, I would only ever run it if I'm needing the income. So currently, I don't need the income from going and doing live teaching, live talks, live one-to-one client sessions, any of those things. And the stress of organizing anything like that, or having to get to anything like that and set it all up, or do the traveling to go to it, or all the stuff that goes around even being there and doing that, whatever it happens to be, far outweighs the fact that it could pay me. Even if someone offered me a lot of money, I would. If someone said to me, I don't know, Dan, could you come to do this talk for £10,000? I would say no. Unless it's literally next door in Chichester or something, I would say no. I've got no interest. I don't need the £10,000, so I'm not going to do it. Money has very little importance to me beyond making sure I cover all my bills. So as soon as I'm paying everything plus have enough left over to make sure that I'm not going to end up struggling in the sort of slightly slower months, then the money side of things doesn't motivate me in the slightest. It just hits a level where it frees up my life to think I don't have to do the things I don't want to do now. Yeah, obviously I'm very aware of the studies and the issues with sleep loss and the ideas around sleep loss in relation to it. How impaired it can make people and what have you. And obviously I'm very aware of the positive benefits of all my sleep stuff. We would probably alternate, or it would probably be predominantly myself, and then David would do some when he's free, and we'd probably have to try and work out a schedule. But the chances are the bulk of it would probably be me, because that would just be the easiest thing. I'm relatively capable of doing these live streams in terms of the technology side of things. And for me, it would just be like, right, once a week, I will give up that period of time, and that's when I'll do it. But yeah, we do have lots of other stuff over on the Mind Changers, and David is currently, I don't know when it's going to get uploaded, but currently putting together I can't remember what he said. I think it was a how to do virtual, psychological virtual reality, to be able to do stuff in your mind that's kind of positive and something to do at times where you're very bored because of your everyday life, like being in a lockdown. But yeah, we just ran out of content. David tried to use some of my old footage just as a way of uploading a few bits and pieces. I look on there from time to time. It's very inactive, so I look on there from time to time to respond to questions. But with both of us being sort of skilled therapists in sort of different areas, he's obviously a PhD doctor. I'm not, but I'm a skilled sort of therapist in my own right. We just saw it as somewhere that we could offer support to therapists and to others, but we just couldn't get enough people to ask questions. We were hoping, we naturally assumed, especially given that I, for ages, was coming onto this channel trying to get questions on this channel from people saying we're going to be doing some more videos over on the mind changes. Does anyone have any things they'd like answered? But we just couldn't get enough to keep it all going. Yeah, it'd be nice to be over playing with all the toys that David has. But assuming that the channel is at a point where it's allowed to do live streams over there, then that just seems like the easiest way of doing it, because then I can just do it live and there's a video then done that week that's already on the channel. I just have to then create a thumbnail for it and a description. Yeah, I can be the experiment dummy. I'm always happy to be a dummy. I have no idea. Obviously, there's no way I'm going to spam pages, so I can't myself go to all these pages and say, "Have you checked out this this page? Have you checked out this YouTube channel?" Because that's just spammy and spamming. And if someone did that to my groups, they would just get deleted because of it being spamming, and people don't like, obviously, a group where everything's spammy. Whereas if it's an answer to a question, so if someone kind of says, does anyone know anything that they use to help them sleep, and someone replies to the question with, oh, I use Dan Jones hypnosis, sleep meditations, or whatever, then that's completely different. You've answered a question with a resource that's the answer to the question. But yeah, but if other people have shared it, I know people do from time to time share things. Likewise, I know now you can tag other YouTubers and things. So one thing I've constantly been pushing for is to try and find a way of encouraging other YouTubers who have bigger audiences than mine, or even the same kind of size audience as mine, who perhaps you always get these people who vlog who say, "Oh, I never ever sleep. I'm always exhausted," and uh, anyone have any ideas on what I can use to sleep, to try and then get uh, sort of say, "Have you checked out Dan Jones' sleep stories? They might help." Um, it's always one of those things where I remember someone saying fairly recently about the fact that most people take off with their channels explode because of luck. Most YouTube channels that have done well purely because of luck, not because there's something special about that person and about what they offer, but because they just got a lucky break. And the thing is, you are more likely to have a lucky break if you just hang around for a long time doing what you're doing, so that there's more opportunities for the lucky break to occur. Whereas when you post like one or two videos and think, oh, this YouTube, like I've got a friend who will see that I make some income here on YouTube, and they'll go, oh, I'm going to have to set up a YouTube channel and try and do the same. And then they'll do like 3 or 4 videos. They'll say, no one's watched them. I haven't got any subscribers. That's a waste of my time. And they'll quit. And obviously, the reason that I make some income here isn't because I made 3 or 4 videos and then quit. It's because I literally put hours and hours into making videos, doing YouTube, trying to interact with people, trying to answer people's questions, trying to be helpful to people. And so you're kind of doing all of that. And so, by always being there, there's a greater chance that someone might eventually, the right person might eventually say, oh, I stumbled across this guy's videos and they're really helpful. My audience should check them out. I know an author who did that. There was an author who for years and years, he'd written a bunch of ebooks, and for years and years he was publishing these ebooks, and they were getting maybe 4 or 5 sales a month on his ebooks, despite him having a whole bunch of ebooks. And he was thinking, this is really not working out for me. I keep writing and I keep telling myself it's okay, I'm just doing it for the love of the writing, when in reality he knew he really wanted to be successful at it. But you tell yourself, oh, it's just for the love of writing. And so he was writing all these books, not getting anywhere. And he said he woke up one morning, and whereas normally he'd get 3 or 4 sales across an entire month, he woke up one morning and it said something like he'd had like 30,000 sales overnight. And then the next day he had another 50 or 60,000 sales. And the next day he had another couple of 100,000 sales. And he said in an interview, to this day, he doesn't know what caused all these sales. He assumes someone somewhere must have read the book that was suddenly becoming popular, must have read it and thought, oh, that's a good book, I'm going to share that with my audience, and must have had a big enough audience that suddenly it took off. It was nothing to do with him. He was doing the same normal stuff, just writing books continuously. And in a year, he then, from that point, he was a multi-millionaire self-published author. And it was nothing to do with him that made him that. It was because he just didn't give up. He just kept doing the same thing. And eventually a lucky break happened. Online sessions can help. There's tons of stuff you have to consider, though, with online sessions. For example, all of the I've talked about this before, but all the safeguarding stuff. Do you know where the person lives, like their actual real address? Do you know how to contact the emergency services for that person's address? So say, for example, you're doing therapy with someone from another country. Do you know the rules around the therapy in relation to where that person lives? Because there are some things where the rules as a therapist that you have to abide by are, some locations have it where the rules are where you live. Others have it where the rules you've got to abide by are where the client lives. So you have to be aware of what the rules are in relation to you doing therapy with that individual, wherever they happen to be. So that definitely applies, for example, in America, with different states having different rules and things. What is your processes for what you would do if, for example, something happened during the therapy session? Say you felt that someone was experiencing domestic abuse, and that might be going on there and then, and you had to get someone out there, or they said they were going to harm themselves. Do you know what you're going to do then? How confident are you that you know what's going on in the person's household in relation to when they're giving you answers? Is someone else in the room with them influencing what they can and can't say? Because you can't see that necessarily. They could be behind the camera. What's the process agreed with clients around if something goes wrong, like they didn't plug in their computer and it ran out of battery, or the connection got lost, or whatever it happens to be? What's the process for how you would handle those moments, and how you'd handle those moments at different points? Like, if you lose connection when you're just having a chat, that's one thing. If you lose connection when they're perhaps eyes closed and doing some inner work, what is your process then? Do you have their telephone number? Do you then phone their telephone to get their attention? But then if you phone their telephone, hopefully it was on silent so that it doesn't ring to interrupt the therapy. But then if it's on silent, how do they know that how can you get their attention? So you'd have to kind of work out all of the risk assessment, safeguarding stuff, have to work out, make sure you're abiding by all the data protection stuff and information sharing stuff. Like, is the service that you use a secure service from start to finish, like from their screen to your screen, so it can't be intercepted or anything like that, so you're not breaching data protection? Is the information that will end up on your computer protected, so that if there's anything on your computer, your partner or children or anyone else who comes to your house and ends up getting that computer, or wherever they find that computer, can't access that confidential information on the computer that maybe is associated with it, like say someone had typed something in a live chat of a Skype session, and that could be revealing or confidential in relation to that person. Their identity could be there as their profile and all the rest of it. So you have to obviously consider all of that, as well as then obviously when you're doing the therapy, you potentially have like time delay. So sometimes there's a bit of a delay, sometimes the screen freezes. So you've got to think which specific techniques work in an environment where you can't rely necessarily on what you can see. So people for years have been doing phone therapy. So you got to think: is there stuff you can do that don't? So, for example, you can't necessarily. I would almost never, if I'm doing if I was doing therapy via Skype, I wouldn't necessarily comment on. I wouldn't say sort of that's it or that's right or whatever in relation to seeing the picture on screen blink or do an out breath, because for all I know, there could be a delay of a few seconds, which means that means nothing to them by the time they hear it, because it's not in context with what I was doing it with. It's just an arbitrary comment that doesn't work. So you've got to think, what bits do you comment on? You can see things that can give away, it looks like they're responding, but then at the same time, sometimes, especially with a hypnotized person, you think, has the screen frozen? Or are they literally hypnotized perfectly fine and they're stationary? Because you can't hear them breathing necessarily. You can't see them moving. You're just talking at a stationary screen. You can see the clock moving, so you can tell that it looks like it's still active. You know, the sort of the count, the thing telling you how long you've been on the call for. You can see that moving, so you know it seems like it's all working fine. But you think, has the screen frozen? Am I literally talking and they can't hear me? So you have that, but I have done perfectly acceptable work via online therapy. At one point, they changed their name, but when I joined them, I can't remember what they changed the name to now. It was something easier. But when I joined them, I think it was Cassamba, and then they changed it to something like Livestream.com or something. I can't remember, something like that. They're a company that does online therapy with a secure service, and it's like Fiverr and that kind of site. So what you would do is you would have your name and your details listed, and you'd have an amount per time period, like per hour or whatever, listed, and then it would be per how long after that hour or whatever, that's listed as well. People then choose the therapist they want, pitch what they want the help with to you. You then say whether you'll accept that therapy or not, and then you do the therapy with them. And then Cassamba, as I think it was at the time, they keep some of that money. They deal with all the payments and everything. They then keep some of that money, and then you get paid afterwards. Sort of every month, you then get paid what money you're owed. So using services like that, and there's other services out there. I haven't looked at what they are nowadays because I'm not doing it myself. But there are services like that where it's kind of a secure service. Everything's being dealt with. As I say, it's a bit like Fiverr, where people pitch to you saying, I'm looking for someone who can help me with this. You then respond saying whether you think you'd be able to help or what you could offer, and respond to whatever questions they've got. They then decide whether to choose you or maybe choose someone else who they've also pitched to. And then if they want your service and you're happy to do it, then you use that system as a way of doing the call. And then you get how it used to work was the first 5 minutes, I think, were free, and the payment didn't start until after that 5 minutes. So that client then has 5 minutes on the kind of video call with you to decide whether they really want to go through with this or not, and to now be talking with you. And then after that 5 minutes, and I think you used to be able to change the duration, so you could set it like up to 30 minutes or something if you wanted. They can then do that free bit, and then if they carry on after the free bit, they're going to be charged for it at the rate that you've said. So yeah, so that kind of service can sometimes be good, because then you're kind of, people are coming to search for therapists and they're searching for you there as well. I don't know. Zoom has had a bit of a bad uh, press recently, um, despite them saying that they're secure. It is quite difficult to find secure services. Um, you're going to do insomnia exclusively, or causing insomnia. You cause insomnia, and I'll treat it, and then we can split the money. um, that's a bit like Darren Brown. Most of you probably already know about this. Darren Brown did a thing when he was younger, where he went around his local community, putting up posters about a lost tarantula, and then went around a little time later, to put up posters offering spider phobia treatment sessions, knowing that all the people with the spider phobias will have been triggered by all the posters up saying there was a lost tarantula in the area, and then all those people uh, would then take up the offer of therapy to overcome their spider phobias. But yeah, so I think the thing to do would be to ask. I know, for example, the General Hypnotherapy Register, generally, apart from the recent issues we've had with therapists having to work from home via internet kind of services, generally the General Hypnotherapy Register was against the idea of people largely doing internet therapy, like Skype sessions or whatever, because of all the issues that need to be overcome. And so it was like, if you're going to do them, it kind of had to be the exception, not the rule, and it had to be based around specific, like clients you already work with face to face. So you already know them, you already know their details, you know their doctor's details, you know all the stuff you need to know. And it's just an exception that you happen to be doing these extra couple of sessions from time to time over the internet. But there was still the whole issue around making sure that data's secure and all the rest of it. But now, obviously, things have changed, and the advice is generally a bit more open and a bit more trusting of some services. Yeah, a racket. But yeah, so now I think they're a bit more trusting that there has to be a way that people can do this sort of work over the internet, and that does involve certain risks, but then it involves different risks when you're face to face with people. Um, so yeah, the other one is you knock them out in 5 minutes, and then because they get charged, if it's on one at the service, like I talked about a minute ago, they get charged until they hang up. So if you knock them out in 5 minutes and leave them asleep for 8 hours, you've just got 8 hours worth of payment for sending someone to sleep. I would never obviously do that, but just responding to that comment. But yeah, so I think the important thing is just to look into what hypnotherapy organizations, legitimate ones, and maybe other therapy organizations like counseling organizations, psychotherapy organizations, what do they recommend are the best services through hopefully their research into the issue, and maybe get some ideas from that, because I know with a lot of things, often some places say that they're secure, but they're not really as secure as they kind of claim to be. So it's trying to know for sure. So anyway, we've gone over a bit, but I felt it was important, obviously, to answer the questions in relation to the doing therapy over the internet. And obviously, as I've mentioned in previous live videos, that whole area is something, the area of safeguarding and data protection and all that sort of stuff is something that had been a big part of my professional kind of employed career, with very high level cases, social care cases and things. And so it's something that uh, I feel is very important and often overlooked among therapy training courses. I don't know many therapy training. Well, I can tell you now, I've never ever attended a professional hypnotherapy training course that has covered the topics of safeguarding, data protection, or any of those kind of things. So I'm sure there are some out there, but I don't encounter many of these courses teaching these things. And I think that it's incredibly important that it's learned and taught, especially now that it's so much more important because of the internet and everything. Yeah, I think people have been recently approving online sessions because of the current situation, and that they're approving it kind of reluctantly because they know the issues as well, but realizing that therapists will lose their livelihoods if they can't do therapy in some way or another. Um, you have to check with your insurance company as well that they cover doing online therapy, because some insurance companies don't cover it. So it's always worth just checking that the insurance company covers it. If you're with an insurance company that say everyone else who say, for example, for me, I use the insurance company that the General Hypnotherapy Register recommends. And so the General Hypnotherapy Register obviously did an announcement saying, we've spoken to this insurance company that we recommend everyone uses. You can use another one if you want, but obviously they can get you a cheaper rate because they're obviously recommending bulk people sign up to this company. They're able to say this company will make sure that this is added. You can do this as part of the policy. It's part of what you can do, and so obviously you got the notification to say that is part of what you're allowed to do. And so that's all kind of cleared up for you. But if you don't know that for sure, then it's worth obviously just checking out just to make sure. So anyway, thank you all for joining me for over 3 hours again. I will be back tomorrow, Friday, I think. I'm not 100% certain of that, but I think it's Friday tomorrow. Well, at least you're covered. So thank you all for joining me here. Hopefully this hasn't been too much for a drone for 3 hours and 13 minutes. And I will see those of you who tune in tomorrow. I will see you tomorrow. If you've got any questions or anything, begin thinking about them now. And I do have some chocolate digestive biscuits. Begin thinking about them now, and then tomorrow you can mention them so that we've got stuff to kick off with. See you tomorrow. Thanks for joining me. And remember, thumbs up and everything if you haven't already. That's always nice and helpful. So I will see you later. Thank you. Bye.